F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
A very good evening to you from Qatar. The Lusail International Circuit is where we find Formula One this weekend. Round 23 of 24. The penultimate race is ahead of us in the Gulf state, made rich by pearls. Tonight, surrounded by darkness, lies this 5.4 kilometre track, illuminated by floodlights. Max Verstappen in his Red Bull has sealed the Drivers' Championship. He is a four-time world champion, but there are still scores to be settled. Today, McLaren could clinch the Constructors' title, their first in 26 years. All the papaya cars need to do is finish 1-2 with the fastest lap or leave Qatar with a 45-point gap to their closest rivals, the Scarlet Red Ferraris. And the top of the field is tight as well, with Mercedes, Red Bull and McLaren all in the hunt perhaps today, and a typically tight midfield to add to that. It's all set up rather nicely then. And calling you through all the action is myself, Harry Benjamin. Joining me in the commentary box is the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Sam, we've got to start with what happened after qualifying yesterday, I think, because if you haven't listened to the Checkered Flag podcast or seen the news, you might not know. Having sealed pole, Max Verstappen was given a one-place grid penalty for driving unnecessarily slowly, and as a result, he now starts second, and it's George Russell in Mercedes on pole position. First of all, what do you make of that penalty? One place for Max Verstappen.
It's very rare that somebody gets a one-place grid penalty in Formula One, isn't it, Harry? It's been done in 2020, I believe, at the Tuscan Grand Prix, Sergio Perez. But
very good, Sam.
I know. It's almost like we've been speaking about it beforehand, isn't it? I think it's fair. The FIA want to clamp down on drivers driving excessively slowly on warm-up or preparation laps or cool-down laps, and that's why I think this penalty was handed down. But very strange that it's one place.
As a result, he gets moved to the dirty side of the grid as well. So it is a fairly short run down to turn one from pole position, where George Russell will be starting, to the braking zone of turn one. It's about 370 metres. Let's see how that affects him. Let's hear from his boss, though. Christian Horner's down with Rosanna Tennant.
Thanks, Harry. Christian, it was a late night notice that we all got that Max Verstappen had been moved across from pole position to P2. Are you happy with that penalty? Was one fair, do you think?
Well, look, I don't think any of us really understand it. I mean, you could argue the other way around. What on earth was George doing on a slow lap, going that quickly in a fast corner where he could see two slow cars ahead of him? So, look, it is what it is. I've never seen a penalty like that before, but if Max needed any extra motivation, he certainly got it.
He's obviously now on the dirtier side of the grid for the start. Is that going to impact him massively? Do you think he's going to send it down into turn one even so?
Well, look, these are like cup final races now. So we've done the hard bit. We got the World Championship one with the drivers. The Constructors is very much a long shot. So if we don't win the race, we've got no chance anyway. So we just got to go for it.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Harry, Christian obviously wasn't watching the Tuscan Grand Prix in 2020 because we know it's happened before.
Absolutely. Run after him and let him know that fact before he starts spreading it around the paddock. 2020 Tuscany. That's where you find your last one-place grid drop. The closest I found before that was 2 places last year at the Brazilian Grand Prix for George Russell and for both Alpines. But he will have that one-place grid drop. But he is a 4-time world champion now, so there's not really much left on the line for Max Verstappen. Let's go straight back to Rosanna then.
I'm joined by Zak Brown, CEO of McLaren. This could be a very big evening for your team. Are you ready?
We're ready. We need to keep doing what we've been doing all year and not change our strategy because we're racing for a championship. We're racing for a win today, and 1-2 ideally. It's going to be tough. I think the top 4 teams, any of them can win, so we'll see how we get on.
In race pace, you are a little bit faster than Ferrari, but you've got these two in front of you, the Mercedes and the Red Bull. You need to clear them. Have you got the pace to clear those two?
I think so, but George looked really quick. Max seemed less quick in the sprint, but he certainly put it together when he needed to. So I think any of these cars up front can win.
Well, good luck. A big mission tonight. Hopefully you can achieve it for your guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosanna. On a mission on the grid tonight, talking to the CEO of McLaren, Zach Brown. And talking of McLaren, Sam Bird, McLaren's Formula E driver. McLaren go. Piastri is fourth, behind his teammate Lando Norris on the grid. That title is on the line. 30 points is the gap they have over Ferrari. How do you think McLaren will play this race, 57 laps ahead of them?
I think to stay in front of the red cars. To be honest, that's the goal right now. They can't win the Drivers' Championship. That's always been sewn up by Max Verstappen, obviously last time out in Vegas. So the objective this evening is purely to stay ahead of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz.
Well, let's hear from one of the men in Papaya, Lando Norris.
Every race is an important race for us, but of course we're at the end of the season and we're in a close fight with the guys you were just speaking to. So it's exciting. It's a good battle with Ferrari, with Red Bull, with Mercedes, and I'm sure today is going to be exciting too.
Any word to all these fans?
Yes, there's a lot of fans here. I mean, the whole way around the circuit, there's a lot of fans. So good to see so many people. And hopefully we can put on a good show and make the race exciting.
Let's bring in the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. Evening, Andrew. Outside of the McLaren battles that we're looking at, George Russell and Mercedes are really throwing a spanner in the works here. Russell's been going very well, Hamilton a little less so. What's behind Russell's continued good performances after Vegas?
Well, the car suits the circuit for a start, and he's gone with it all the way. Lewis Hamilton's still not confident in it, but he's found a car that can run it low because the circuit's smooth, and this circuit's mainly medium and high-speed corners, and that suits the Mercedes design parameters. Just on the penalty, Christian Horner not renowned for being able to see anybody else's point of view but his own. Basically, Russell was two corners from the start of his flying lap, and Verstappen was outside his delta defined by the FIA, and Russell ended up in the gravel. So you can see why Verstappen ended up with that penalty, because the argument is it's even though he's not on a flying lap, Russell, it still affected his flying lap.
It certainly did, but for George Russell then, it did inherit pole position. It's his fourth pole of the season. Let's hear from him speaking to Stephanie Sard.
So, George, you are going from the pole. Are we seeing a second win in a row?
I mean, that's the plan. Pole position is the best place to start. I was really happy with qualifying yesterday in P2, and today is going to be a close race.
How does Doha look this season, other than being cold?
I mean, I really enjoy coming here. This track is one of the best. It's so fast, so high speed. A lot of us are feeling our necks through the high-speed corners, but it's going to be a long, fun race.
George Russell then, it's going to be a long, hot race, 57 laps, though the temperature is much cooler than they were last time we raced in Qatar. Indeed, air temperature at the moment, 19.3 degrees, track temperature, 23.2 degrees. Sam, one thing we haven't quite seen off yet are the two Ferraris. Charles Leclerc starts fifth. Carlos Sainz goes from seventh. Now, they were sort of building this weekend up for a little while, saying they weren't going to go well here, almost discounting them from the fight. Why is that, and what are your hopes and predictions for them in this race?
I don't think this track configuration in Doha really suits them too well. It's all, as we've said, medium and high speed corners. They tend to do well where there's a little bit more low speed cornering and more heavy braking zones. But nevertheless, Carlos Sainz yesterday hung on to the back of the top three quite well, showing decent enough tyre life. So I do expect the Ferraris to try and hang on to the tailcoats of the McLarens. We've seen that they've got good straight line speed as well, so let's see what they can do. But I think the fight inside the top seven could be quite frantic.
Yeah, it really will be an intriguing opening lap. We're just over 5 minutes away from lights out.
The Mocola is broken and I cannot drink.
So Charles, we don't have time, so you need to keep it like this.
Charles Leclerc on the radio just there. I think he was just saying his water bottle was broken, so they won't be able to drink, and they can't fix that either. I mean, Sam, that is an issue around here. Although it's cooler than it was last year, it's still hot when you're in a Formula One car going at speeds of over 300 kilometers per hour. Yeah,
when you get hydrated in these cars, it's not fun. Then you lose mental concentration, and it affects you physically as well. So not ideal for Charles Leclerc. These drivers, though, are conditioned to drive these cars for an hour and a half, 2 hours flat out out. So I think he'll survive. He'll manage, but yeah, he'll be thirsty later on.
Yeah, well, talking of temperatures, we're inside the commentary box. Rosanna Tedden, how is it actually feeling down on the ground?
It's quite chilly, Harry. It's about 19 degrees, and we've had this northwesterly Shamal wind blowing across the circuit today, but it's starting to die down a little bit. That is actually characteristic of that type of wind. Much more blustery during the day and then sort of ebbs away overnight, but very chilly. That's going to mean it's a bit of a different challenge for the drivers over the course of the race, and it's going to drop a couple of degrees as we get further into the race as well. So it'll be a changing condition as well for the drivers to cope with. I'm just watching everyone running off the grid. Mechanics wheeling all the kit that they take onto the grid down the pit lane, and some of them nearly having a few bumps along the way. It's like rush hour on the M25, Harry.
It certainly is, isn't it? Just on the peripheries of the top 10, we find Sergio Perez, Sam, down in 9th, once again way off the pace of his teammate, but that's actually a better run for him in recent times.
Yeah, but it's been a horrid year for Sergio Perez, one that he will quickly forget. Rumours spreading deep and wide about his career within Red Bull and indeed within Formula One as a whole. I think we'll know more in the coming month or so, but yeah, he had a better qualifying, but still 9/10 of a second off his teammate, Harry.
Goes from 9th place to Sergio Perez. Let's head back down to Rosanna Tedden.
Yes, Harry, I'm with the newly crowned F1 Academy champion, Abby Pulling. Wow, what a race yesterday. It's been a strange weekend because you haven't had a second race here, but you are champion. What a feeling. You must be on top of the world.
So incredible. I mean, gosh, that race, you know, I didn't start in the position where I needed to finish, so I knew I needed to move forward. And yeah, I've not had the best starts every time in this car, so I knew going into turn 1 I needed to attack, and I mean, yeah, it made it count. You know, if I didn't do it then, it would have been, you know, prolonged, and with the race cancelled this morning. So yeah, I'm so incredibly proud, and you know, so thankful to the team of what they've given me. I just can't thank everyone enough.
You've worked so hard though. The stats are incredible when it comes to this championship for you. That must give you so much confidence moving forward into your next venture.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect it to be as dominant as it has been. I mean, for me, I know that the championship mentality is consistency, and that's what, you know, I've achieved that. And I mean, there's still a race weekend to go, but I'm going to, you know, go in with the exact same mentality as I have all year, and you know, try and get some more race wins under my belt. Would be nice. But yeah, I don't have to worry about points anymore or the championship. I can do what I want and enjoy it. I mean, I have all year, but even more so now.
Absolutely. Abu Dhabi will be a fabulous weekend for you, I'm sure. And I'm sure people are now going to be so keen to follow your career, Abby. Where are you going to be racing next year?
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing with F1 Academy, their prize is a fully funded seat in GB3, which is a great championship. It's a British Formula 3 kind of style race, and gosh, I'm so excited. It's bigger and better machinery. It's a new challenge, more downforce. It's mixed competition as well. And I'll be continuing with Road and Motorsport, so the team that took me to the championship this year and also won GB3 with Louis Sharp as well this year. So they're a very good team, of course. Yeah, I'm so looking forward to continuing this on with them.
Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And while I was talking to Abby, Harry, someone from McLaren came by and patted her on the shoulder. So many people so happy with what she's achieved, and respect for an amazing championship this year for her.
Absolutely. Abby Pulling turning heads in the Formula One paddock has sealed the F1 Academy Championship trophy. A bright future for her, of course, backed by the Alpine Formula One team. Mixed fortunes for them. Pierre Gasly lines up 11th. Meanwhile, Esteban Ocon starts in last place for the first time this season. Sam, just quickly, that midfield fight, there's just 6 points separating Haas, Alpine, RB. That is a proper dogfight.
Yeah, very big race coming up for Kevin Magnussen, Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda. I think it's going to be fists out and a big punch up all the way to the line this evening for them, because these points mean big prize money for these teams come the end of the season.
Yeah, at the moment it's Haas who hold on to that seat ahead of Alpine and RB, and Haas with the advantage on the grid in the form of Kevin Magnussen, who managed to squeeze himself up into the top 10. But we are at the Lusail International Circuit. Ahead of us, 57 laps of racing around this just over 5.4 kilometre circuit, 16 15 turns, and it is going to be a fierce fight under the lights, illuminating 20 cars out on the circuit. We will run you through the grid in full, but it is now time for the Qatar Grand Prix. Position then, it's the Mercedes of George Russell. Alongside him will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull after his one-place grid penalty. Lando Norris, his best qualifying in Qatar, starts third, ahead of his teammate Oscar Piastri. Charles Leclerc's Ferrari rounds out the top five, ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Then comes Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, eighth for Aston Martin, ahead of the second Red Bull of Sergio Perez, and Kevin Magnussen's Haas rounds out the top 10. Zhou Guanyu gets his best qualifying all season, starting 12th for Sauber, ahead of his teammate Valtteri Bottas. Yuki Tsunoda for RB is 14th, ahead of Lance Stroll. Then comes Alex Albon in 16th. Liam Lawson starts 17th for RB, ahead of Nico Hülkenberg's Haas. And on the back row in 19th will be the Williams of Franco Colapinto and the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Well, the floodlights are on full beam, illuminating this Losail International circuit. We are on the formation lap. Sam, what are the drivers doing on this formation lap as they peel their way round to the grid?
Right now, Harry, all the drivers will be working on their tyre temps, trying to load the front tyres, make sure that they're in the right operating window. With these cars, so much power through the rear axles, it's actually harder to get the front tyres up to temperature than it is the rear. So they'll be working on them. Also working on their brake temperatures, making sure they're in the right window. You don't want them running too hot, but you certainly don't want them running cold going into turn one.
That's the voice of the McLaren Formula E driver, Sam Bird. Down on the ground is Rosanna Tennant. Tyres are always the talk of the town. Rosanna, what have you got for us?
Well, everybody's starting on that medium tyre, apart from Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas. He's starting from P18, so I'm sure the teams are going to be keeping an eye on him to see how that hard tyre performs. But the medium was really the way to go. It's just about how long they can keep that working. If someone goes early and pits, it could well force this into a two-stop race, but everyone, I think, feels it will be a one-stop race this evening. Who knows, though? Anything can happen, can't it?
That's Formula One in a nutshell. Thanks, Rosanna. We'll come to you for updates throughout the race. George Russell already lining up in that grid spot. He's going to have to be waiting there a little while, isn't he, Sam? And all the time losing temperature.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be sitting there an awfully long time. Just for everybody's info, the only car that has chosen not to go on the medium compound tyre is Nico Hülkenberg down in 18th. He's going to be starting on the hard.
Yeah, we could well have a one or two stop starting on the medium, could go to around lap 18 or lap 25 before putting on the hard tyre to the end. Ferrari, they could be going aggressive for a one stop perhaps. They're the only team that didn't have two sets of new hard tyres to play with for this Grand Prix, but now the anticipation starts to build ahead of the penultimate round of this, the longest season in Formula One. Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull, is standing in the garage with his arms clasped behind his back as all 20 Formula One cars are almost lined up on the grid. The pink Alpine of Esteban Ocon moves to the right-hand side to line up 20th and last. He's just behind Franco Colapinto in the Williams. The green flag flies at the back. It's the Red Bull of Max Verstappen in second. On the front row is the silver arrow of George Russell. It is all eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing in Qatar, and it's an even start from the top two. Russell tries to move over, but it will be Verstappen who has the inside line, but Lando Norris in the papaya McLaren slides down the inside and gets both of them, but Verstappen bites back through the left-hander of turn two. Verstappen leads Norris, then comes George Russell, and Charles Leclerc holds on to fourth.
Oh, amazing start from Lando Norris there. We thought he'd done it, didn't we, going through turn one, but Max Verstappen fought back brilliantly. Who said that the dirty side of the grid was going to hold back Max Verstappen? Certainly didn't. As we see cars off at the back of the grid, we're waiting to see who it is. It's Franco Colapinto in the Williams at turn one. We're not sure who's gone wide at turn 5. We'll be able to tell you in a second.
Yeah, we've got Colapinto, Ocon, Hülkenberg have all had troubles on the opening lap. Yellow flag out in second. Sector 1. Looks like Ocon and Colapinto have actually come to a halt, and that has brought out the safety car. So everybody comes to a slow, no overtaking. The field will bunch up, and we're not even halfway through lap 1. And it is indeed the Williams of Franco Colapinto and the Alpine of Esteban Ocon who find themselves in a tangle on the exit of turn 1.
Also, just for everybody's info, Lewis Hamilton has dropped from 6th down to 9th on the opening lap. Really bad first couple of corners for him. Sergio Perez has moved up to P7 from his initial P9 starting, so good for him. Also, Yuki Tsunoda has gained 4 positions in the midfield.
Yeah, good start for the Japanese racer, and Nico Hülkenberg, the third car, perhaps involved in that incident with Ocon and Colapinto. We haven't seen it yet, but he has got a puncture on his rear left tyre, and Hülkenberg started all the way down in 18th. The German driver who's had 10 top 10 starts this year, and after an energy deployment issue in qualifying was left languishing at the back. But at the end then of lap 1, the safety car is out. Max Verstappen leads. Lando Norris, George Russell has fallen down to 3rd. Then it's Leclerc, Piastri the top 5, Sainz, Perez, Alonso, Hamilton, Yuki Tsunoda rounds out the top 10. They are your point scoring positions. Then comes Magnussen in 11th ahead of Gasly. Bottas is down in 13th. Lawson, Joe is the top 15 ahead of Albon, Stroll. Then comes Hülkenberg. Now we're just getting another look at the start, and it was a fairly even start from the front row, Russell and Verstappen, but they were almost looking at each other, and Norris decided to sling it up the inside.
Yeah, he had a super start while the other two were bickering and battling through turn 1. Lando Norris sneaks down the inside and says, thank you very much, I'll have a piece of that. What I was looking at, Harry, was the shocking getaway from Lewis Hamilton. Really slow getaway. Looks like a really under-engaged mapping there caused that, and then a big collision between Ocon, Hülkenberg and Colapinto. Need to see another replay of that on board Ocon, which is I think what we're going to be getting right now. I actually think that might have been Ocon's fault, but let's wait and see when we get down to turn 1 what really happened. He moves to the left-hand side of the track and clips and collects Nico Hülkenberg, and then in turn he collects Franco Colapinto. So not ideal for those drivers.
Well, this is the sound of Nico Hülkenberg, and I almost wonder it kind of stemmed from him. He couldn't get it turned in properly.
Actually, you're right, Harry. You're right. He's taken a lot of speed into turn 1 to avoid being overtaken, and on those hard compound tyres, didn't have the grip, had a little bit of a twitch, and around she went.
Oh, and this is the sound of another hit. This is Alex Albon.
Massively hit by Stroll. Yeah, copy that. I knew he was going to do it. I could tell.
And Lance Stroll did indeed come into the pits. This is the sound of the Canadian racer in the green Aston Martin coming through the right-hander in the early part of the lap, and it's front left for the Aston Martin connecting with rear right of the blue Williams, and round goes the Thai driver of Alex Albon. You know what? This is exactly what Williams did not need. 2 cars involved in collisions. That brings their total for the year up to 17. They have totaled the most amount of crash damage. It's a team that cannot afford any more spare parts.
Mate, this Aston, what the
That was Joe Guan Yu, by the way, in the Sauber, who lost positions from the start, but in turn managed to gain 2 more because he had the best view in the house of Stroll and Albon. And well, if the stewards are asking Joe Guan Yu, there might be a penalty going towards Lance Stroll.
Yeah, Alex Albon over the years has loved a round the outside move, and it's actually got him in trouble more times than it's paid off, in my opinion. You know, you look back at Austria, you look at Brazil, so many times he's tried to do a move around the outside and had contact with the driver on the inside. I do think that it's Lance Stroll's fault, but it's lap 1 of the race. There's no need. It's a long race, 57 laps. Get him next lap or later on in the race. I think that to put your car in that kind of position so early on is really risking a lot.
I do feel for the two Williams drivers. It feels like they were both the innocent parties there. Colapinto had nowhere to go. He was on the outside going into turn 1, and Ocon being collected by Hülkenberg, and it was Skittles. And Colapinto was the final one to fall in that melee at turn 1. So safety car is out then. We're under the lights in Qatar. It's the Lusail International Circuit, and it's Max Verstappen who leads. Lando Norris, Russell, Leclerc, Piastri is the top 5. A reminder, McLaren could clinch the Constructors' World Championship at the end of this race. Right now, if it ends like this, they would not do it. They need 45 points over the Ferrari team. Right now, it stands at 38. Sainz is 6th ahead of Perez, Alonso, Hamilton. Tsunoda is the top 10. Then it's Magnussen, Gasly, Bottas, Lawson. Joe is 15th ahead of Albon, involved in that skirmish with Lance Stroll, who did pit and is now back out there on the hard tyres. So too Hülkenberg, involved in turn 1, and that collision has been noted by the stewards. He made it back to the pits and has also elected to change onto the hard tyre, and so we have lost the Williams of Franco Colapinto and the Alpine of Esteban Ocon.
Well, Hülkenberg was already on a different set of hard compound tyres. If he'd started on the medium, he could have pitted and gone on to the hard and then tried to run to the end. That wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world for him. He would have suffered at the end of the race with regards to his pace, but we haven't seen an awful lot of deg here this weekend. We saw in the sprint race people were still putting in some pretty quick lap times come the end of the 19-lap race on the medium compound tyres. So yeah, big shame for him, but I would say the turn 1 incident was probably on his shoulders.
That's the voice of the McLaren Formula E driver Sam Bird, alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, and down on the ground, Rosanna Tennant.
And I'm just watching the cars weaving from left to right going down the start-finish straight. This is going to be a critical getaway, isn't it, for the two McLaren drivers? Lando Norris needs to be absolutely right there with Max Verstappen, and the same goes for his teammate Oscar Piastri. Needs to get the jump on Charles Leclerc, so they need to be fully focused and really ready to pounce come the restart. But we know how good Max Verstappen is at managing a restart. He's had plenty of experience at that. But yes, these tyres, you need to keep that temperature up, don't you? So you are really ready when it all gets going again under green flag conditions.
Absolutely, Rosanna. One thing I would say as well, we've just seen an onboard from Max Verstappen's start. I don't see how his starting position with regards to that yellow line was any different to what Oscar Piastri got a penalty for recently, where they said that he was over the yellow line. It looked very, very close to me to what the limits are that are done by the FIA.
Well, safety car is now ending. Max Verstappen effectively takes over as managing the pace for the rest of the field to allow Bernd Mailander back to the pit lane. They're crawling their way through the final of the triple right-hander, turn 14. Weaving left, weaving right is Max Verstappen, while Lando Norris in the papaya McLaren is just stalking him like a hawk. Then comes George Russell. The question will be, when does Max Verstappen decide to put his foot to the floor and get this race restarted? And he has done it on the exit of 15, but is still slightly weaving as they come into the right-hander of 16, but he has gone, and it is a good restart as we come around the final corner and cross the line to start lap 5. It's Max Verstappen who leads Lando Norris. Then comes George Russell. The front three fairly even. Under pressure, though, is the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. George Russell and the Mercedes trying a late move down, I should say, on Piastri on Russell. Meanwhile, Leclerc also stalking Piastri too. It is a fight out there. We've got more cars off in the exit. It's the RB of Liam Lawson and the Sauber of Valtteri Bottas, who have found themselves spinning out of turn 1. More carnage as soon as we get back underway. Verstappen, Norris, Russell, Piastri 4th, ahead of the two Ferraris. Leclerc, then Sainz.
Yeah, great news for McLaren fans. Both McLarens now ahead of both Ferraris. That's exactly what they wanted from the race this evening in Qatar. So good job by Norris and great job by Oscar Piastri to get ahead of Leclerc.
Yeah, absolutely. He was coming under a little bit of pressure there. Equally, Russell was piling on the pressure for Lando Norris, but now they can breathe slightly. They've got through lap 1, but it's not been without incident either. It did look like Liam Lawson was the RB to tumble down the order. Seems like everyone's got them going again, though. That investigation going on between Ocon, Hülkenberg and Colapinto for that first turn 1 collision was noted. There will be no further investigation. Lap 1 racing incident. Put that one down to Meanwhile, 18 cars remain in this race. Kevin Magnussen has just managed to get through on Fernando Alonso and get himself up into 10th. Crucial in the fight for 6th place in the Constructors. He's behind rival RB car Yuki Tsunoda. Lap 6 of 57, and the cars sparking from their underside as they make their way down the just over 1 kilometre straight that arcs into the right-hander of turn 1 before you then throw it left through the U-bend of turn 2. A slight kink through the right-hander of turn 3 takes you along a short straight down to 2 right-handers, turn 4 and turn 5. And right now, Oscar Piastri in the McLaren is looking like he is closing in on the George Russell Mercedes car ahead.
Yeah, we've only had 6 laps of this Grand Prix so far, only a couple of them at full racing speed, but it certainly seems like Oscar Piastri has the pace over George Russell and his Mercedes car right now. George Russell, though, on this lap, able to extend a little bit and eke a little bit of lap time back again and close in towards Lando Norris. This battle, I think, Harry, is going to go all the way to the end between Verstappen and Norris.
The speed on the straight is worrying.
That was Fernando Alonso saying the speed on the straight is worrying. He has just plummeted down to 12th place. First Magnussen got through, then Pierre Gasly. The 2 Saubers are behind him now, Joe and Bottas. After a good qualifying from Fernando Alonso, who started this race in 8th, he has now lost 4 positions. So it is going from bad to worse for the Spaniard. The incident that we saw on the restart of the safety car, that involved Liam Lawson going wheel to wheel with Valtteri Bottas' Sauber. Lawson ended up spinning round. Bottas went wide, was able to continue and slots in just behind his teammate. But Lawson, who span out from the sprint race last year, spinning out from the Grand Prix, but is holding on to his position in 19th and 18th place and last. We've lost Esteban Ocon's Alpine and Franco Colapinto's Williams. Back out up front, Max Verstappen has just set the fastest lap. His gap between himself and Lando Norris is 1.2 seconds, so now Norris will not get the aid of DRS. Then comes Russell, another 1.3 seconds back, but this is where the fight is brewing then. Less than a second separating the Australian Oscar Piastri in the Papaya McLaren, just behind George Russell. Then it's the 2 Ferraris who are tucked in neatly behind.
What a turnaround, though, for Max Verstappen and Red Bull from yesterday's sprint race, where he had a very, very quiet race, didn't he? Down in 8th place, very unlike him, but then came alive in qualifying, and right now in the race looks in his normal, majestic form, pulling away at the front, 1.4 seconds clear of Lando Norris. The top 4 are actually making a bit of a break from the Ferraris, 2 seconds clear of P5 right now.
Yes, Sainz is starting to pile a little bit of pressure on his teammate Charles Leclerc. He's getting within a second. He's 8/10 of a second within his teammate, but it is Verstappen who is just pumping in fastest lap after fastest lap. But how much is he eating up his tyres? Will that come into play a little later on? He's basically cutting through the air in front and getting the fresh air, which will help him, unlike Lando Norris, who has to just sit in behind and take all that heat.
Well, Lando Norris, unfortunately for him, is 1.3 seconds behind. He needs to get within 1 second in order to activate DRS. And normally when you do that, you can stay within 1 second. Box to retire the car from Lance Stroll.
And that was a 10-second time penalty as well, but they've decided to call it quits for Lance Stroll, who comes into the pits. The Canadian retires from this race. We've now lost Stroll, Ocon and Colapinto. So by the time we reach lap 8, we're already down to 17 cars remaining in this race. And no, clever from Aston Martin. They're not retiring straight away, because then that penalty, I believe, would carry over to Abu Dhabi. So what Lance Stroll and Aston Martin have done is they've come in for a pit stop. They've left the car for 10 seconds, changed the tyres, send him on his way for one more lap. Penalty ticked off, then he'll come in to retire, I imagine, Sam?
That's exactly what they've done, Harry. Well done. Thanks. You know your rules.
I was quite proud of that.
Really good.
Thank you, Sam Bird. Lap 8 of 57. Max Verstappen 1.6 seconds ahead of Norris. Then comes Russell in the Mercedes. Oscar Piastri is 4th for McLaren. Charles Leclerc and the 2 Ferraris making their way down the main straight, now 5th and 6th. Perez has made improvements, up from 9th. He's 7th.
I cannot believe it, man. 2 years with the same problem on the straights.
frustration building from Fernando Alonso, who is not happy in that Aston Martin. He's stuck in the wheel tracks, really, of Pierre Gasly's Alpine. He's getting the aid of DRS because Zhou Guanyu in the Sauber isn't really able to catch the Aston Martin ahead. So he's stabilised down in 12th position. And that was the sound of Lando Norris running a little bit wide, coming through the double right-handers of turn 4 and 5, kicking up a little bit of gravel as well to boot, Sam. Yeah, looking like quite a bit of understeer through that section for Lando. So we see a replay of Fernando Alonso just getting barged out of the way by the Haas of, was that Kevin Magnussen? Yeah, it was. I think that was how Magnussen got by a few laps ago, and it was pretty much Alonso going off track, understeering in that Aston Martin. Meanwhile, from the steward's room, the incident involving car 44, that's Lewis Hamilton, for a false start. That has been noted. And his start was horrendous anyway, so maybe that's what happened. Maybe he moved forward, tried to stop it, and then went again. We're going to have a replay now. I think he went too early for Lewis Hamilton. We were just watching the lights there. Hamilton.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, Hamilton went too early and then tried to stop it, and that ended up getting him a poor start, falling back through the field, and that'll be a fairly slam dunk, won't it, Sam? It was very close, Harry. I mean, if I was looking at the lights then and looking when the car reacted, and it was, I think it will be deemed a false start, but boy, oh boy, was that close. Well, Hamilton is behind Perez in 8, 6/10 of a second back, so he's within the DRS zone. Then there's a bit of a gap to 4 seconds of Kevin Magnussen. Tsunoda is piling on the pressure, though. Magnussen actually has just got ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in the last lap or so. That's good news for Haas, continuing to extend their hold over 6th place in the Constructors' Championship. Tsunoda 10th, then it's Gasly, Alonso, Zhou, Bottas, Albon the top 15. Then comes Nico Hülkenberg. Liam Lawson is 17th. Lance Stroll has now come back into the pits to retire, along with Esteban Ocon and Franco Colapinto. So 17 cars left remaining. So we're all expecting a one-stop this evening in Qatar. Everybody except, is it Nico Hülkenberg and Lance Stroll, who's pitted 3 times already, so out of the race pretty much same as Hülkenberg, is they're on the hard compound tyres. Yesterday in the sprint race, that's a 19-lap race with less fuel on board, getting to lap 19. All the cars were able to do that, so I expect to see cars in, what do you reckon, Harry, in about 10 laps time? Yeah, I think, well, if you're on the medium, starting on the medium, between lap 18 to 25 is the rough prediction. So yeah, we're on lap 11 now. We've just witnessed actually a couple of replays that we missed earlier on of some excellent racing between Yuki Tsunoda and Kevin Magnussen. Tsunoda diving down the inside of Magnussen's Haas, going wheel to wheel through turn 1, actually forced Magnussen off the road, but then Magnussen came back at him through the left-hander of turn 2, and has now actually dropped Tsunoda, who is still in 10th and actually coming under pressure from his former teammate Pierre Gasly in the pink Alpine. Here is Gasly.
Tsunoda moving on the braking. Too late.
Copy. Friends off the track. They'll call each other out on it though, Sam. Absolutely. Well, of course, as soon as you put your race helmet on, everybody is your enemy when you're a racing driver. Do you know what? Yuki Tsunoda, he's impressed me this year. If I were to pick a partner for Max Verstappen next year, I'd give Yuki Tsunoda a go. I would. I really would. Sam, I would be right there with you all the step of the way. I think we'd make a good management team. Tsunoda is currently holding on to that final points-paying position, but he is getting more and more pressure from Gasly, and that fight going on is bringing in Alonso and Zhou Guanyu into the fight. It's lap 12 of 57. Verstappen leads nearly 2 seconds the gap to Norris.
I jumped on the brake because otherwise I was going to smash him.
Okay, mate. I jumped on the brake, otherwise I was going to smash into him, is what Pierre Gasly was just saying on the radio, trying to further the point to not only his team, but the stewards and race control, who can hear all the radio messages as well. That hasn't yet flashed up as being noted or investigated. I'll tell you what has, though, is a 10-second time penalty for Liam Lawson, causing a collision with Valtteri Bottas. Lawson coming off worse at the end of that, though. He's down in 17th. But once again, Rosanna Tennant, it's Max Verstappen who is classing the field right now, 2 seconds ahead of Lando Norris.
managing it beautifully, isn't he, Max Verstappen? And you were talking about the tyre life. Well, of course, we've had a few laps under safety car, so coming into this race, we thought it was a one-stop. The medium should last between 18 and 25 laps, but perhaps they can go even further into the race. We didn't see much degradation yesterday during the sprint. There was a risk that the one-stop would be a little bit marginal, a little bit risky, but I think now that jeopardy has been thrown out of the window because of that safety car, I'm sure it's going to be a one-stop now.
Thanks, Rosanna. Yeah, let's see what they do. The likes of Lawson and Hulkenberg, who find themselves at the back, will have to try and just get to the end of this race, whatever they can, perhaps hoping for another safety car. That would throw a spanner in the works. Coming into this race, there was only about a 50% chance we would get a safety car, and straight away we got one after the collision involving Esteban Ocon and Franco Colapinto, along with Nico Hulkenberg, going down into turn 1 of lap 1. Lap 13 of 57, though. Verstappen leads Norris, Russell, Piastri, Leclerc. That's the top 5.
I think the most interesting battle on the track right now, Harry, is the fight between Kevin Magnussen, Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly.
From what we can see, Verstappen's tyres similar to ours, Russell behind slightly worse than ours.
That was Lando Norris getting some tyre information on the radio, and you talk about that battle, Sam, on the track. Well, Magnussen's a little further up the road in 9th, but now Pierre Gasly lining up his old teammate Yuki Tsunoda. The RB driver has now fallen down outside of the points into 11th as Gasly swept around him and has got that Alpine up into 10th, and that is crucial. Those 3 teams all battling it out hard for 6th place in the Constructors. This is the sound of the Sauber of Zhou Guanyu, who had a good view of, his teammate, Valtteri Bottas, almost getting taken out by Liam Lawson. What did you make of that little incident, Sam?
Well, that's Liam Lawson's fault, isn't it? Into turn 1, just taking it deep, trying not to get overtaken and making a mistake. You know, Liam Lawson is still fresh and new in his Formula 1 career, but that's a mistake. A little bit of understeer, and then it snaps to a bit of oversteer with the brake shaping going through turn 1, and around she went, and big penalty for him, and no points this afternoon for Liam Lawson, which in this battle for 6th place in the Constructors is not what RB needed, especially when Yuki Tsunoda looks like he's now struggling for pace in his fight to try and catch Kevin Magnussen and Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, in that battle for 6th, by the way, the live table is showing Haas holding on to it. Alpine now jumping ahead of RB by quite some margin, about 4 points splitting them as Tsunoda continues to tumble down the field. He's now going side by side through the right-hander of turn 1 with the Fernando Alonso car, the Aston Martin driver, the wily old fox. He's still got it.
We've had track limits at turn 1 on lap 10, which was 3 laps ago, probably when you passed Tsunoda.
He pushed me out there.
Yeah, it's just track limits at the moment, but it is under investigation.
That's Kevin Magnussen's radio, by the way. They will be very much keeping him informed of that because they do not want to have to serve a penalty. Magnussen's quite familiar with penalties this season. They will not want to have to lose the possibility of scoring 2 points, which is what you get for 9th place. By the way, the incident for the false start for Lewis Hamilton was investigated, and I believe, did that come up with a penalty?
It did indeed.
Yeah.
5-second timed penalty for car 44, Lewis Hamilton. No further investigation for Fernando Alonso, turned 14, rejoining unsafely. But yes, Lewis Hamilton, 5-second time penalty. He'll serve that at his one and only pit stop.
Hamilton is embroiled in a battle with Sergio Perez right now. He cannot get past the Mexican in the Red Bull. Has remained within about half a second to a second of 7th place Perez. Just can't find a way through. So that 5-second penalty will set him back even further. Could bring Kevin Magnussen into the frame.
I think he's got a clear gap to Kevin Magnussen, but being stuck behind Perez is dropping back away from the Ferraris, and Perez doesn't have the pace this weekend or this year really to fight with the Ferraris. They're now 4 seconds behind Sainz in 6th, so this battle for 7th and 8th is looking tricky for Lewis Hamilton right now.
Have Yuki Tsunoda's tyres absolutely gone? He has fallen down the field. At one point he was 9th. He is now down to 13th. Zhou Guanyu and the Sauber just swept past him round the outside into turn 1 in the fluoro green Sauber. Now Zhou's teammate Valtteri Bottas is eyeing up Tsunoda's 13th place. This is not going well for the RB team here.
No, he's getting a bit bullied out there, is Yuki Tsunoda. It seems like when one overtakes, another one's lining up to overtaking him again. Great move by Zhou Guanyu round the outside into turn 1.
Yeah, let's see how that one heads, because Tsunoda is now just half a second in front of Valtteri Bottas. Meanwhile, Lando Norris has now stolen the fastest lap point away for the time being from Max Verstappen. 1.7 seconds is the gap between our leaders.
Hey, I'm pushing 100%, bro.
I know, man. Hang in there. Hang in there.
Tsunoda on the radio saying he's pushing, and his engineer is just telling him to hang on in there, eking it out until they can pit and get some fresh rubber on that RB car. He is looking in his mirrors. Valtteri Bottas with the DRS in the Sauber is closing in on him. I'm not sure if Bottas will try a late move. No, not into turn 1. That does indeed close up. Out in front, lap 16 of 57, under the lights here at the Lusail International Circuit. It's the Qatar Grand Prix. We're just a few kilometres north of Doha, and it's Max Verstappen who leads, having started this race in second. 1.9 seconds the gap he has to Lando Norris. George Russell, who started on pole, has fallen down to third. And, well, really, Sam, he's had Oscar Piastri in his mirrors for pretty much the entire race, but Piastri is not really able to close up enough to try and move.
No, and we have to remember as well, George Russell started on not a new set of medium compound tyres. They were fresh, yes, not done too many laps, but most of the people around him did opt to start on a new set, or had a new set of mediums readily available, as we see Oscar Piastri losing the rear of his car through the middle of the last corner. That'll cost him a lot of lap time. Thankfully, he'd got DRS, so he'll be able to try and eke some of that time lost back again. But big moment there from the rear of the car, the rear of the McLaren.
Piastri finished second here last year in the Grand Prix, and of course won the sprint here last year spectacularly. His first win of any kind in Formula One. Took the sprint win yesterday for McLaren, an orchestrated move by his teammate Lando Norris, but is struggling under the lights right now. Tried to get it turned in for the sweeping right-hander that sees off a lap, and that rear was just not playing ball for Oscar Piastri, and he's lucky because Charles Leclerc is a little way behind, about 2.5 seconds, but the Ferrari would have spotted that and will know that Piastri is feeling the heat under these lights, and have the tyres just starting to show that they are giving up on the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. Meanwhile, nothing bothering for Max Verstappen, who is keeping his head cool, calm and collected. The 4-time world champion with nothing left to gain leads.
Let's check pressures, tyre pressures. The way I drive, puncture is likely.
Pressures are fine, Charles, for now. Pressures are fine.
So Charles Leclerc saying the way he's driving, a puncture is likely. Wants the team to check the pressures. So he's clearly not comfortable out there, Sam, on feeling tricky on these tyres.
Well, I think running low tyre pressures and taking a lot of curb leaves you quite susceptible to a puncture on curb striking.
Well, we saw that, of course, a lot last year, so much so that we had to have a mandated pit stop length brought in by Pirelli, but we haven't had anywhere near the issues that we saw this time last year. It's lap 18 of 57. It's Verstappen who leads. Norris, Russell, Piastri, Leclerc is fifth ahead of Sainz, Perez, Hamilton, Magnussen and Gasly, who is looking at the back of Kevin Magnussen coming into turn 1. That fight is brewing nicely. The Alpines closing in on the Haas. That's your top 10 as it currently stands. Let's bring in the BBC's F1 correspondent now, Andrew Benson.
Well, Harry, it doesn't look like, or it might not appear like much is going on, but actually this is a really close race between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Lando Norris has set 2 fastest laps in a row. He's keeping Verstappen's lead under 2 seconds. It's 1.8 seconds at the moment, really keeping him honest. Just behind them, they've got a bit of a gap to Russell of about 4 seconds, but Oscar Piastri is now dropping away from the Mercedes. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc has broken clear of his teammate Carlos Sainz and is beginning to close in on Piastri. So it's all tight and tense as we get quite close to the pit stop period.
And we know that the McLaren car, especially over the course of this year, has been good on its tyre life and tends to come alive a little bit towards the end of a stint. So just as we say that, though, Max Verstappen pumps in the fastest lap of the race. The gap is 1.78 seconds. So there's still time for Lando Norris to close in towards the end of this stint, but it is intriguing how this battle will progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, it could be a really important battle for Norris to seal the constructors title for McLaren.
The others.
So front runners are mid-25s.
Mid-25. The second.
That was Lewis Hamilton on the radio asking how slow he is compared to the others and not liking the answer right now. He was in a decent fight with Sergio Perez, but has now fallen off the back of the Mexican, about 1.6 seconds back. It's not going Hamilton's way this weekend in Qatar. A man who has sounded dejected pretty much since Friday's practice action, wasn't happy with how his performances were in the sprint, and for a man who has been describing himself as, well, I don't know why I'm not fast. It's not what we come to expect to hear from a 7-time world champion trying to get something out of this race. Currently lies down in 8th. Just behind him is Kevin Magnussen. Well, just behind him, about 9 seconds back, is Kevin Magnussen, who is keeping Pierre Gasly nicely at bay. The battle between Haas and RB rumbling on for that 6th place in the Constructors' title. Right now, Max Verstappen is 1.8 seconds clear of Lando Norris, and if it were to end like this, well, the Constructors' World title would go on and be settled in Abu Dhabi. It's 42 points, the gap at the moment, separating McLaren and Ferrari. But if Lando Norris can take the win in this race, well, that gap would extend, and on countback they would take the title.
Tyre update so far, tyres as per model. Yeah, I'm pushing flat out, so I feel like I'm filling them, but they seem okay-ish.
Lando Norris on the radio getting yet more tyre update, pushing as much as he can. We're entering lap 20 at the moment, so could some pit stops be imminent here as Yuki Tsunoda, who has been tumbling down the order, had a little bit of a reprieve, but now the writing is on the wall, and Valtteri Bottas lines him up down the main straight in his Sauber with the aid of DRS round the outside into turn 1, and Bottas gets through up into 13th. Tsunoda's down to 14th with Albon and Hulkenberg on the hunt for him next.
Yeah, tough weekend for RB and tough weekend for Yuki Tsunoda. Kevin Magnussen's doing a good job holding up Pierre Gasly, and we know how feisty Kevin Magnussen can be out there, whether that be overtaking or defending. So I'm hoping we get to see a little bit more of K-Mag versus Pierre Gasly. And just as we say that, in a little screen, we see on board with Pierre Gasly hunting down the Dane.
Yeah, and out in front though, it's another fastest lap for Max Verstappen. They're playing tennis with these fastest lap points at the moment, Rosanna. Norris 1.8 seconds back now from Verstappen.
And Russell is struggling a little bit. He's been on the radio saying the balance is good in the low speed areas of the circuit, but when it comes to turn 2, turns 4 and 5, where it's a little bit faster, it's really washing out. So Russell also not comfortable out there.
Yeah, George Russell a further 5 seconds back from the front 2. Then comes Oscar Piastri 1.2 seconds back. Now, what about the threats of an undercut, Sam Bird, from Lando Norris? If he is able to pit ahead of Max Verstappen, try and force the Red Bull's hand, how could that play into their hands?
I don't see an undercut being that good here this weekend, just based on the fact that the pace on used tyres is still really decent. If the tyres had dropped away massively, yes, we'd see that the undercut would be extremely powerful, but with the pace that Max Verstappen and Lando Norris are able to pump in on 21 lap old tyres still, I can't see, even if Lando Norris were to pit now for a set of new hards, it would take a while for those hards to fire up, and the pace difference wouldn't be that great.
Lap 22 of 57 for the Qatar Grand Prix. Max Verstappen leads Lando Norris by 1.8 seconds, and that is really where the fight for the win is coming from. Verstappen or Norris. Russell further back in 3rd. Then comes Oscar Piastri 4th. Charles Leclerc is in 5th for Ferrari ahead of his teammate Carlos Sainz. Then comes Sergio Perez in the Red Bull 7th ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who is 8th. Kevin Magnussen is holding on to 9th, but is getting immense pressure from the Alpine of Pierre Gasly behind, who is 10th. Alonso's 11th. Joe and Bottas for Sauber are 12th and 13th in their best race in a long time. Tsunoda is down in 14th and tumbling down through the field. Albon is closing in on him. About 1.1 seconds back now is the Williams driver. Then comes Nico Hulkenberg, involved in a collision in lap 1 of turn 1 of lap 1. He had to pit early doors. He's down in 16th. Then comes Liam Lawson, who was also involved in an incident and which he received a penalty for, with Valtteri Bottas spinning round in lap 1 on a separate, in turn 1 in a separate separate lap. He's down in 17th, and those are all the cars we have left. No Lance Stroll, who has retired, along with Franco Colapinto in the Williams and Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. So what was 20 cars under the lights, now down to 17, and we're all waiting for who will pull the trigger first to come into the pits, who can eke these tyres out, these medium compound tyres out. We've already seen some cars, like the one you're listening to now, Oscar Piastri coming through the final corner, running wide, pushing, and even then Sam had a little bit of a moment on the exit, taking a lot of curb.
Yeah, pushing really hard. In fact, this is the closest he's been to the back of George Russell in a while, but no move there for the young Australian Oscar Piastri on George Russell. But George Russell right now looking like those kind of slightly older medium compound tyres are starting to give up a little bit, starting to struggle. I think Oscar Piastri is sniffing the potential of a podium here.
Piastri is really turning up the wick, isn't he? Last lap around about 3/10 quicker than the Mercedes in front of him, and I think we all thought a bit more. We'd expect a bit more from the Mercedes and George Russell at this stage of the race. Looks like he is the one now on the back foot, and we're just getting another look then at Piastri really taking a lot of speed through that final corner with the aid of DRS as well. The flap in the rear wing draws open, and he was able to gain, well, you gained about 20 kilometers an hour advantage on the car in front of you down the straight. It was indeed the closest he's been in some time. Within 0.2 of a second was Piastri on Russell. So the Australian in the papaya coloured car is closing down on that final podium place.
All these front runners will now be looking and trying to find a gap in which to slot into if they were to pit early. Right now they're looking to filter in around about just about in front of K-Mag, as George Russell is the first to pit and get rid of those medium compound tyres. He'll be on to the hards.
In he comes, down to you, Rosanna.
And the mechanics go to work very quickly, but he doesn't get going. Oh no, the rear right has got stuck. It didn't come off quick enough. They put the hard tyres on, and he does finally get going. But that was a slow stop for Mercedes. That was a 7-second stop time. Not ideal when he's trying to hang on to a podium position this evening.
Not ideal at all. That'll be music to the McLaren pit walls ears, but they'll have their chance as well. Let's see though where this puts Russell out onto the track. He's fallen down right into some traffic as well. Alonso's going to go through into 11th. Russell has put the hard tyre on.
He has put the hard tyre on. He wanted to get ahead of K-Mag. Hamilton radio.
How far are we off the front now? So 1.2 to the front. Is the car broken or just... we're just underbalanced. By the look of it, Lewis, just underbalanced.
And Lewis Hamilton not happy with his car at all this weekend. Going back to his teammate though, George Russell wanted to be ahead of K-Mag on the exit of the pit lane, but a slow rear right change has meant that he's filtered in behind Fernando Alonso. That's absolutely devastating for him. He's going to be jumped probably in the pit stops by Piastri, by Leclerc, and potentially by Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, the Ferraris could well get the advantage off the back of this as well. That is not what George Russell and Mercedes needed. He's fed out just behind Fernando Alonso, down outside the points in 11. But George Russell then has bitten the bullet and become the first of the front runners to come into the pits. It's lap 25 of 57. Verstappen leads for Red Bull by 1.9 seconds. Then comes Lando Norris in second. Piastri is third now. Leclerc and Sainz, the two Ferraris, fourth and fifth. Perez is sixth, ahead of Hamilton. Then comes Kevin Magnussen in eighth. Gasly ninth. Alonso is 10th. Russell, having pitted, is now 11th, ahead of the two Saubers of Joe and Bottas, who's just come into the pits. Tsunoda is now ahead of him. Then comes Albon, Hulkenberg and Lawson, the 17 cars left in this race, with retirements from Stroll, Ocon and Colapinto.
Am I right in thinking, Harry, that if George Russell were to have a storm of a race from now until the end and finish in fourth ahead of the Ferraris, that McLaren have the potential to become champions? Is that correct?
McLaren at the moment are on course to do that right now. They need to be, they could be 44 points ahead of Ferrari at the end of this race, and they can clinch it if they win the race. So that's why this battle is so important between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. They're currently at 42 points. So Lando Norris, if he wins it on countback, could clinch the Constructors' title for them.
I thought Piastri had to be second as well.
They need 44 points with the win, and the gap between them right now is 42. They need 45 points at the end of this to seal it here without the win. Those are the determinations. Not anymore, not after the sprint.
Okay.
That's how it works now for this. Those are the points permutations coming into this. So just to reiterate, they need to leave Qatar with 45-point gap ahead of Ferrari, regardless of where they finish. If they get the 45-point gap, they have won the Constructors' Championship. They can do it on 44 points, but they need the win to do that. On countback, it will go to McLaren, who have more wins than Ferrari. So this one's still working itself out. It's advantage McLaren, though, for the time being. He's 1.8 seconds back as Lando Norris to Verstappen in second, but he holds the fastest lap. There'll be a lot of eyes on what George Russell can do, won't there now, Sam, having changed onto that hard tyre?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on board with him now. Those hard compound tyres are now firing up, and he's lining up on the back of Fernando Alonso, a driver who's not happy with the ability of the straight line speed of that Aston Martin. Has been quite vocal about it, saying that it's the same issue for the last 2 years. Just how long is it going to take George Russell to get by the Aston Martin? That's going to be critical, because if he takes a long time, both those Ferraris will be by him, and then his weekend will be a little bit ruined.
This is the sound of George Russell trying to close in on Fernando Alonso ahead of him. Alonso is staying out there on that medium. Indeed, Russell is the first of the pit stoppers from that top running order. Bottas also came into the pitch from a little further back in the Sauber. He's fed out down in 17th and last. He's stuck on the hard tyre. So let's see what the progress will be from George Russell, who is closing in on Alonso. Here's his teammate.
Slowly beginning to turn up, not much. Copy Lewis, yeah, start to see that now.
So the car is slowly beginning to turn, but not much. Hamilton maybe then starting to feel a little more confidence in that Mercedes, but it's small crumbs at this stage for the 7-time world champion, who is down in 7th, cannot at the moment get past Sergio Perez, having been quite close to him, has fallen away. His teammate George Russell tried to move just now on Fernando Alonso, but wasn't close enough on that occasion.
Well, no, obviously Lewis Hamilton is in P7 at the moment. We've had 27 laps and he's 27 seconds behind the leader, so averaging a second a lap slower than Max Verstappen.
Lap 27 of 57, and George Russell now almost reiterating what his teammate is feeling, saying the car is just not turning. Sam, can you describe what that's like when you're in a car and you're just not getting the feeling of basically the steering wheel going where you're pointing it?
It's awful. It's absolutely terrible. Understeer is so slow. As a racing driver, you want a car that turns in well. We can deal with the rear of the car. Let us play with that. But the last thing you want is an understeery balance.
For Russell, making his way through these high, medium speed corners, you need to feel the grip, you need to feel the confidence. These cars are planted through the majority of these 16 turns around this track. Long duration corners as well. That's why they haven't really played into the hands of Ferrari so far this weekend. Magnussen's just come into the pits, by the way. He has decided to come in for a change of tyres. That's an intriguing battle with Pierre Gasly to watch out for. Gasly stays out, so the RB team will be watching Haas's improvements once the Dane emerges from the pit lane. And that's the sound of his stop. Looks like a fairly clean stop. We're just catching the end of it. 2.9. We've seen quicker, we've seen slower.
Yeah, not bad for Kevin Magnussen and the Haas team there, 2.9. This battle is really hurting George Russell, isn't it? Being stuck behind Fernando Alonso. Alonso, I think, using his deployment well down the straight. And he actually does look quick in a straight line compared to the rest of the field. We just saw a screenshot saying that he's done the fastest speed trap of everybody in the race. Or, as we see, Lewis Hamilton losing the rear of the car.
Big moment for Lewis Hamilton, kicking up the gravel as well. Might be coming through the that turn 10 perhaps, as he arcs his way up through 11, and just not happy. That's lost him a big chunk of time. Still in 7th though. He's got a big gap behind him, almost 14 seconds to Pierre Gasly. So that really is the kind of split in the field at the moment in terms of the front runners and then the midfield.
It looks like Lewis is trying to rotate the car with the throttle, and that was just overdoing it a little bit. But you know, he knows that understeer is slow. Lewis doesn't like an understeery car, So he was trying to rotate the car by playing with the throttle mid to exit, and that was just overshooting it a little bit too much, as we see George Russell going for a move on Fernando Alonso and not being able to do it. That's the same move that he was trying again and again and again yesterday on Oscar Piastri, and he wasn't able to pull it off. It seems like that's the only place really that the Mercedes driver is comfortable and confident in trying to overtake. In fact, everybody is comfortable to overtake, is down into turn 1.
Lap 29 of 57. Max Verstappen 1.8 seconds clear of Lando Norris, who has that fastest lap. This is the sound, though, of George Russell and the Mercedes, who, as Sam was saying, is still trying to hunt down Fernando Alonso. We've got a yellow flag actually out in sector 1 right now. Let's see if anybody's had a little moment. Not sure who it is. It's not going away either. It has now just gone back to a green flag. But it's Verstappen, Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Sainz the top 5. Then it's Perez in 6th, Hamilton 7th ahead of Gasly, Alonso, Russell is the top 10. Then it's Zhou, Tsunoda, Albon, Hulkenberg and Lawson the top 15. Then it's Magnussen and Bottas, the 17 drivers that remain in this race. And I think, Sam, we might have spied the reason for the yellow flag.
Absolutely. Looks like somebody's lost their mirror going down the main straight. So that is quite a large piece of debris. I wouldn't be surprised if a virtual safety car is called here, because if that gets hit by a car, that could be quite a dangerous thing out there on the racetrack.
Yeah, a little bit of debris. The yellow flag has gone back in now. It's not directly on the racing line. Here's Norris's radio.
I'm pretty sure you're going to tell me where to go, but if you had any pace to get close.
Speak louder, please.
You'll tell me where to go, but if you had any pace to Verstappen, we'd take it to push up to him.
If you've got any pace for Lando Norris, hoping to try and take it to Verstappen. He's 1.2 seconds back from Max Verstappen is Lando Norris. He's got the fastest lap. Oscar Piastri is in third, a little bit behind. Oh, that's where the debris came from, the underside of the Williams of Alex Albon. It's the wing. It's the mirror.
It was the mirror.
Flying off, and it has just landed off the racing line. Okay, then into the pits. Ferrari or not? They were getting ready, and now they've decided to come back in. Was that a little game of chicken from the Ferrari pit wall? Leclerc in 4th at the moment, Carlos Sainz in 5th.
Yeah, absolutely, a little bluff there. I'm really surprised that there's not a virtual safety car for that mirror. That is although it's a small component, it's quite a thick component, and if a car hits that at bordering 200 miles an hour, it could do an awful lot of damage to the front wing, cause a car to retire. I'm very surprised that a virtual safety car has not been called, considering turn 1 is the major overtaking point.
Certainly is. Well, this Qatar Lusail International Circuit playing host to the penultimate round of the Formula One World Championship. This the longest in Formula One history. We'll have one more to go next weekend.
Check if you lifted for the yellow. There was a yellow in the middle of the straight.
Yeah, there was. We'll have a look. Make sure he lifted. Lando did not lift.
I hope you record that then.
That's Max Verstappen, and that's what I love about this. There's 360 thinking when you're in the cockpit. It's not just about driving. He's trying to find any edge that he can get over his competitor Lando Norris, who is not letting the Dutchman escape up the road. If he has deemed not to have lifted, well, that could be a penalty. Those are the rules. You have to lift in a yellow flag zone.
Yeah, but then you could look at the mini loops and the mini sectors and see if it was his fastest or not. So that's the counter argument from McLaren. If it wasn't his fastest sector through there, then technically he hasn't really gained a lasting advantage.
Well, let's see how this stands out. Just to bring you up to speed with what's happening in the Constructors' Championship. Well, given that McLaren claimed a 1-2 result in the sprint, they've got a 30-point advantage over Ferrari. So they need to outscore Ferrari by 15 points under the lights this evening and not be outscored by Red Bull by 23 or more points, I believe, in order to claim that title. So there is a number numbers game being played in the background here. They change after the courtesy of the sprint. That is how it will unfold. We'll keep you up to speed with how it does so throughout the course of the remaining laps of this race. Lap 32 of 57, Nico Hülkenberg has decided to come into the pits. Of course, he was embroiled in a Turn 1 incident and does indeed hit his marks outside his pit box and changes from the hard onto the medium. Lando Norris, 1.8 seconds back from Max Verstappen. That's where it's kind of been ebbing and flowing for the McLaren man, chasing Max Verstappen, the four-time world champion, and they really are eking out the laps on these tyres. The two Ferraris, when we thought they might well be called into the pits, we did see the Ferrari mechanics emerge into the pit lane, but then they came back in, so perhaps trying to cause a little bit of uncertainty towards their rivals. This is the sound of Lando Norris. It's just a replay from a few laps ago, getting up to 7th gear, down the main straight. Now, I don't know about you, Sam, but we can hear the sound of the engine. We see the yellow flag illuminated. It felt like there was a sound of a lift, or was I making that up in my ears?
Honestly, it's so hard to tell from that onboard shot. It didn't look like Max Verstappen lifted very much either as well, though, did it? So I think Max Verstappen trying his best very cleverly to suggest that Lando Norris didn't lift. And just think about that. He's doing that all while doing 200 mile an hour plus around a very, very complex circuit.
Bit of traffic for the second McLaren of Oscar Piastri to negotiate in the form of Valtteri Bottas' Sauber, who gets out of the way. He'll have to get out of the way for Charles Leclerc as well now, who is coming through. Piastri, who has fallen back 9 seconds back from his teammate. George Russell was in that battle. He pitted earlier and, just absolutely scattering the front wing of Alex Albon, which has been laying nicely off the racing line. Bottas, as a result of getting out of the way of the Ferrari, absolutely obliterated. Bit of carbon fibre now strewn onto the start-finish straight.
The new hard compound tyres on George Russell not really doing anything to suggest that he's going to push forwards and do much now in this race. He was expecting a burst of pace as he put the new tyres on, but it just hasn't happened. We're seeing the replay of Valtteri Bottas going over that piece of debris that I spoke about from the wing mirror of Alexander Albon. As we see, Lewis Hamilton has a puncture, presumably from the debris down the main straight.
Front left for Lewis Hamilton. He runs wide out of turns 4 and 5. Sparks are flying from the underside of that Mercedes as he tries to bring it back to the pits. Sainz might well be coming into the pits with the other Ferrari. Let's see where this damage was taken from. We don't know if it was over the debris, or we saw this last year with the curbs. They have shaved them down this time compared to this time last year, and it's another puncture for Carlos Sainz of the Ferrari. It's deja vu. Have the tyres not lived up to what Pirelli promised us they would do this weekend, being able to hold on to their life and hold on to the curbs, or is it the debris that's going into the start-finish straight?
I think it's the debris, Harry. It's got to be the debris.
Piastri has just come into the pits, by the way, and changed his tyres. 3.3 seconds for him, so a little slow for the McLaren. Has anybody else been scuppered by a puncture? Right now it's Lewis Hamilton and the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. We haven't got any replays yet to show you exactly where they picked them up. Sainz has made it back to the pits. Carlos Sainz, slow stop. About 35 and 57. Verstappen leads Norris. Then Charles Leclerc, Perez, Piastri, the top 5. Yeah, we've just had a bit of action here. 2 punctures unexplained so far. That's brought out the safety car for Lewis Hamilton and the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. But the advantage is with Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. He's leading by 2.7 seconds. But Lando Norris is still in the hunt here as McLaren try and seal the Constructors' title under the lights in Qatar. Okay, so safety car is out after 2 cars have received punctures. That is Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. He has made it back to the pits and has just changed his tyres. The other car to be affected was Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. He has also made it back to the pits and come out on the hard tyre. That has brought out the safety car. Verstappen has pitted, so too has Norris. This is really the clinching point that we were waiting for. Leclerc is in as well. This wheels spin on the exit, laying rubber marks down as he peels into the fast lane of the pit lane. Verstappen emerges in P1. Norris is in P2, but there is traffic between himself and Max Verstappen in the form of Lewis Hamilton and I think one of the Haas cars as well. Perez has just come in. Now we're desperately hoping that the pictures we'll be receiving shortly might well tell us where these punctures have been picked up from. The curb striking that we saw last year, that was the reason that Pirelli brought in a mandated pit stop, essentially, across the Grand Prix last year. Here's Sainz.
Think if it's all okay with the front left tire. It doesn't feel okay.
Copy. RB8.
It's a bit of damage.
So that was Sainz on the radio there. He's come back out in 10th spot. Now, it's the pyramid-shaped curbs that they have here. They have been shaved down. The tips have been rounded off at 7 of the corners coming into this race. Also, gravel strips behind the curbs implemented to try and avoid the drivers going onto them. There is also a bit of debris scattered on the start-finish straight, but it's not really on the racing line. But we need to get a proper replay of where these punches have been taken. Let's head down, though, for live action on the ground. Rosanna Tennant.
It's been such a busy pit lane, hasn't it, Harry? Everybody diving in to get rid of their tyres, including George Russell, who had already made a stop earlier on in the race. When his teammate Lewis Hamilton came in with that puncher, he said on the radio, "Trust me to have this luck, man," to his race engineer, Peter Bonington. He was stationary for 10.4 seconds while the team sorted out his car. And Carlos Sainz, we've heard him on the radio, haven't we, saying to check the front left tyre. He was stationary for 9.8 seconds while they fixed his puncher and sorted out perhaps any extra damage he'd encountered. The car's now weaving out on track, everybody filtering out of the pit lane, but that was very, very busy, and they had been out there for a very long time on those medium tyres, hadn't they?
They certainly have. The car, Sam, actually being told to go through the pit lane. Now, I'm a 50-50 mindset right now of what the cause is. Here's Russell.
Why have we put hards on? Why have we put the hards back on, mate?
That was George Russell, who did come in for a pit stop in that melee and stuck another set of the hard tyre on. So he's not happy with that decision. We were seeing and witnessing and hearing his unhappiness towards being on that tyre. Okay, we're getting a look. Valtteri Bottas goes across the start-finish straight where the mirror is and obliterates Alex Albon's mirror. Then the Ferrari of Sainz goes through it. Does Hamilton go through it? We're just seeing now, it's his front left that gets the puncture. He's running through turn 1. Carlos Sainz, it was the other victim of a puncture. He rides over the curb a little bit, coming into the sweeping right-hander of turn 1, and it's also the front left for Carlos Sainz.
So we don't know what's happened here, okay, but the debris, the mirror was in the middle of the pit straight, and when it got hit by that Sauber, the debris sort of spread towards the pit wall and maybe a little bit back towards the racing line. But all the tyres that have had punctures are the front left, and that's the same tyre that was the problem last year, and it's the fast right-handers around turns 12, 13 and 14 which caused the problems last year. Heavy load, high speed, cars going around them, going over the curbs. I don't know whether it's the debris or the curbs, but I think a lot of the Pirellis are renowned for having a sort of sensitive sidewall. They're renowned for needing to be pumped up to high pressure to keep them safe from this sort of problem. I suspect, I'm guessing, if I had to guess right now, I'd say it's the curbs, not the debris, but I don't know.
Well, do you remember as well, not too long ago, we heard a radio message from Charles Leclerc talking about the same thing.
So Leclerc's talking about he's pushing hard, going onto the curbs, will he get a puncture? Here's Verstappen's radio.
Anything on that yellow flag? Or you can just go flat out to yellow?
Literally just speaking about it now, Max. Stand by.
Max Verstappen just trying to reiterate the message that when we got the yellow flag initially, that was Lando Norris lifting enough, and Verstappen making sure Red Bull are hot on that and reporting it to the stewards.
In all of that, with all the pit stops filtering through, Charles Leclerc, critically for Ferrari, has got himself up into third place ahead of Oscar Piastri. That's not what McLaren would have wanted. I think it's a debris thing. Kevin Magnussen?
What up there, man?
Kevin Magnussen reporting what happened there. He's going side by side down the pit lane with the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso, and Alonso pips into the post on the exit.
So you two think it's the curbs, and rightfully so. But I just think it's a little bit of a coincidence, the fact that a car, Valtteri Bottas, has run over the mirror casing, carbon fibre, which will, break into a million pieces. Alongside that, inside the carbon fibre casing of the mirror will be the glass in the mirror itself. If that has shattered all over the circuit, that's why we see a safety car right now. Running over that could cause a puncture.
I agree with you. There's two things that could add up. It could be the debris, it could be the curves. What's interesting is they're not sweeping the pit straight. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know.
And if they're not sweeping the pit straight, why is the safety car out?
But it's got the safety car's got to be for that, surely.
Well, if it is, why aren't they cleaning the track?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
There's a lot of intrigue going on, a lot of questions trying to be answered tonight under the lights of the Losail International Circuit. The cars having to come through that pit lane, and a moment ago, while we were just chatting there, Lando Norris came into the pit lane and absolutely had to stamp on the brakes as he hit the pit limiter, and we're about to see a big lock-up.
Hamilton speeding 100%. He just brake tested me again. I locked both my fronts. Potential double flat spot.
Well, that was what Norris had to say about it. It wasn't because he was slamming on the pit limiter. It's because the Mercedes with Mercedes in front had come to quite a slow speed, and that forced Norris to get onto the brakes. It's lap 38 of 57. We've had two punctures. And for Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz, that's brought out the safety car, and every single team has decided to use that if they hadn't pitted yet to come in, and this is how it looks out on the track. It's Max Verstappen who comes out as the leader. He was already going into this period. Lando Norris is still second. Charles Leclerc has jumped up to third for Ferrari, crucial in keeping their fight alive for the Constructors' Championship. Then comes Piastri, and Perez is the top five. Pierre Gasly is sixth ahead of George Russell. Then it's Carlos Sainz down in eighth ahead of Zhou Guanyu, and Fernando Alonso is the top 10. They are your point scorers. Then it's Kevin Magnussen in 11th ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Alex Albon is 13th. Nico Hülkenberg 14th. Then it's Liam Lawson for RB in 15th. Lewis Hamilton, one of the victims of those punctures, down in 16th ahead of Valtteri Bottas in 17th. We've lost Lance Stroll, Esteban Ocon and Franco Colapinto in this race. The safety car now, having taken all 17 remaining cars through the pit lane, has now taken them down the start-finish straight, and that is where they're heading now. The sound you're hearing is the onboard of the Mercedes AMG car that's driven by Bert Nylander, and there is still a little bit of carbon fibre just getting kicked up by all the cars as they head down towards turn one. Rosanna.
Yeah, they were all weaving on the start-finish straight there, and then as they came up to the point where that debris was, they all started to stop weaving. Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas were told to overtake the safety car to join the lead lap, so that has now happened. And just a note on the curbs, I think they haven't shaved the curbs between the exit of 7 and the entry of turn 9, so that is where there are still similarities to last year's race, but otherwise all those curbs have been shaved down, that pyramid element to them. They should have gone by now, but yeah, who knows whether it was debris or curbs. I'm sure we'll find out after the race, or maybe some of them will come on the radio.
Yeah, thanks, Rosanna. Well, the safety car is now ending, so they feel like they've cleaned up that start-finish straight enough. I suppose if we see any more punctures in this race, well, it might well reveal itself as the cause.
But Harry, we haven't seen anybody clearing the debris off the pit straight. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but there's been no TV pictures of it. And, the question is, I don't think anybody seems to know why the safety car is out. Let's not forget, this is a new race director who was brought in for the last race in Las Vegas. Everyone in Formula One questioned why that had happened. We know it was because of Mohammed Ben Sulayem, because Tim Mayer told us on the BBC Sport website earlier this week that it was his decision to do that. It's like people are going to be asking questions as to what has happened. Why has the safety car been deployed? If it's the debris, why wasn't it cleared up? If it's the curbs, why is it safe to restart the race?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the BBC F1 correspondent Andrew Benson alongside myself. Harry Benjamin is the McLaren Formula E driver. Sam Bird calling you through this one. We're on lap 39 of 57. What's turned into a bit of a bizarre Qatar Grand Prix. And just when I think Max Verstappen or Lando Norris at least thought Verstappen was going to go through the left-hander of turn 15, then Verstappen braking and Norris catching him at a rate of knots. This is the sound on board Lando Norris. We're about to go racing again. It'll all be down to where Max Verstappen decides to go. He's coming into the final corner now, the right-hander of turn 16. A wiggle on the rear end of that Red Bull as he puts his foot to the floor and goes. This race is back underway. Green flag running, and Verstappen immediately to the far right-hand side of the circuit. Down the start-finish straight. Norris is round the outside. They're side by side through turn 1. Verstappen shows in the door. Norris manages to hold on, but has to slot in behind. Doesn't run off the circuit. Leclerc and Piastri just behind are having their own battle side by side through the right-hander of turn 3 for the Ferrari and the McLaren and the Mercedes of Russell, keeping Carlos Sainz and the other Ferrari at bay. It's Red Bull versus McLaren versus Ferrari versus Mercedes over the top 6 positions in this race. Carlos Sainz further back, falling down just behind the Alpine, actually having put pressure on Russell, has now lost out to the Alpine of Gasly.
What a restart by George Russell. Yellow flag in sector 3, apparently. Not sure what that is for right now, but great start.
Perez.
Great start by George Russell.
Perez has lost drive. Perez is stopped. He span out and has lost drive. Just about avoided getting any kind of contact, and that has brought out the virtual safety car. Everybody has to slow down to a delta, and disaster. This is Nico Hülkenberg's worst race of the season. He finds himself stranded in the gravel trap coming down towards turn 10 and beached, as Sergio Perez is also out of this race for Red Bull. Forlornly walks away, his helmet down. Has he got one more Formula One weekend as a Red Bull driver? Who knows? The questions continue to circle around Perez's performance alongside Max Verstappen, but that looks like Perez and Hülkenberg out, and it's been upgraded from a virtual safety car. We're back to a safety car, Sam.
Oh, breathe, everybody. That was a heck of an opening lap after the safety car. What a restart by George Russell. Really, it was defensive driving for Max Verstappen on the limit, but I think fair in the end. All the drivers scrambling for grip around turn 1 and turn 2 on the hard compound tyres.
For lap 41 of 57 then, and as we get a couple of pit stops as well from the 2 RB cars who are coming into the pits. It will be Tsunoda and Lawson double stacking, using this time to try and get a pit stop, having had no pit stops for nearly half the race. Now everybody's either on 3 or 4 pit stops thanks to 2 safety cars. The first brought out after 2 punctures and debris scattered across the start-finish straight. Whether the punctures are related to the debris or the curbs, we will find out across the course of this race, and long after we'll be analysing all of it in the Checkered Flag podcast, which you'll be able to hear on BBC Sounds and wherever you get your podcast. But right now we're under safety car conditions then. It's Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Russell the top 5, then it's Gasly, Sainz, Alonso, Joe, Magnussen the top 10. This is the sound of Sergio Perez, and he lost it before they'd even restarted under safety car. Here he is. So he lost it, managed to get it back going again, but then somehow conked out. Sergio Perez, who didn't go when the light went green starting from the pit lane in the sprint race either, and his boss Christian Horner telling him you got to go when the green light comes on. Not the day for Sergio Perez to remember in his career. In the midst of that fantastic opening battle, Sam, on the safety car restart, we almost had the Alpine of Gasly almost catapulting himself into turn 1. Big lock-up, and managed to just about keep himself out of anyone's way. This is the sound of George Russell, who was alongside the Alpine, which went sailing on. That allowed Russell to close up to the back of the Ferrari and the Piastri McLaren that were battling ahead of him. Sainz was just behind George Russell, fighting with him as well. But then Sainz lost out to the recovering Pierre Gasly further back as this dynamic unfolded. But that was brilliant racing from everybody involved.
Brilliant racing for everybody. We're now on board with Oscar Piastri fighting with Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc going into turn one. Look how everybody's scrambling for grip as those hard tyres just haven't fired up yet. Not the heat all the way through the compound of the tyre yet, and everybody just searching for some grip out there on this opening lap. Great racing.
That is the sound of Piastri, who was dicing with that Ferrari. And then this is from the other side of it, Pierre Gasly. That's how he was able to get so close to Carlos Sainz then. Sainz having a big moment in his Ferrari, catching a snap as they made their way towards the hairpin of turn 6. And that's how Sainz lost out to Gasly. So Gasly's actually having had a disaster of a restart on the safety car, recovered to 6th. And Sam, Nico Hülkenberg's had a bit of an off-colour race, hasn't he, so far, for a man who has been the most consistent point scorer for Haas over the last 2 years, losing the rear end, coming down towards the hairpin and into the gravel.
Yeah, very strange spin there for Nico Hülkenberg. Looked like on power, just no rear grip. We're going to see another safety car ending now. What does Max Verstappen do at the restart here? He typically slows the pace right down towards the end of the lap and crawls around and then tries to catch people off guard.
What position I'm in? Currently P12. Car's messed up, mate.
That was Lewis Hamilton saying the car is messed up, mate, having been told he's down in P12 ahead of his old teammate Valtteri Bottas. It's lap 42 of 57. The safety car coming to an end. 2 safety cars have reshuffled the order. Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz suffering punches. We've now lost Nico Hülkenberg and Sergio Perez, having spun out both in separate incidents on the second safety car restart. And we're about to get our third safety car restart. The safety car has made it back, and Verstappen is backing up the pack so much coming out of turn 15, and now puts his foot to the floor, and it's a much better getaway this time around. He's dropped Norris as they come through the final corner, the right-hander of turn 16. Norris is going to have to look at his mirrors because Charles Leclerc is all over the back of him. They won't get DRS, and with 15 laps to go, how much toe can Charles Leclerc get off the back of the McLaren of Norris, who defends going down into turn 1? That forces Leclerc around the outside. He cuts back in to try and take the inside line, but Norris has it in hand. It's McLaren, Ferrari, then McLaren again. Piastri in 4th, and it is the weekend, the first weekend where McLaren could clinch the Constructors' World title. Their closest competitors are Ferrari.
Well, that was hard to watch as a Ferrari driver, really. As a McLaren driver, that was really hard to watch. Charles Leclerc got an amazing toe down to turn 1, looked for all the world like he was going to overtake, but Lando Norris late on the brakes and really fired in a load of minimum speed to make sure Charles Leclerc stayed behind. Norris in 2nd, Charles Leclerc stays in 3rd.
And the other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz trying to recover places he lost on that second safety car restart. Lost out to the Alpine of Pierre Gasly down in 7th. He's got Fernando Alonso for company behind.
Check the front left. I can see sparks coming from it and I have a vibration.
Check the front left, sparks coming from it, and I have a vibration. That's from Oscar Piastri. The 2 punctures we have seen so far from Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton have both been the front left tyre. Is Piastri's about to go? He sounds concerned. He's currently in 4th place. This race is absolutely opened up. It was getting a little bit stagnant, let's face it, but now it has come alive on lap 44 of 57. Norris is still close to the back of Max Verstappen, just over half a second the gap between the two. Verstappen ahead of Norris, then it's Leclerc, Piastri, Russell the top 5, Gasly, Sainz, Alonso, Joe, and Albon is 10th. Then it is Magnussen in 11th, Bottas 12th, Tsunoda, Hamilton, Lawson is 15th, and that's the last remaining driver. We've lost Hülkenberg, Perez, Stroll, Ocon, and Colapinto.
DRS has been enabled now after the safety car, and Oscar Piastri has been told by his engineer that the tyres look okay, mate.
And a 10-second, has that just come through? I think it has. 10-second stop-go penalty for car number 4. That is Lando Norris for failing to slow under yellow flags. Disaster for Lando Norris and McLaren as he will face that 10-second stop-and-go penalty. That's Kevin Magnussen saying Albon just rammed me. The two were fighting going into turn one, and well, it did feel a bit like Albon was ramming, and there was contact between the Williams front left tyre and the side pod of the Haas. Magnussen forced out wide on the exit there, but that for the McLaren of Lando Norris is not what he wanted to hear, and that was why, Sam, Max Verstappen was so vocal on the radio to check if Lando Norris had lifted under that yellow flag.
Lando Norris now has got to push for the lead of this race and then just try and disappear into the distance, and that's exactly what he's trying to do with the fastest lap of the race on the last tour. He's got to try and get a 10-second gap to somebody if they can even do the penalty like that.
It's a 10-second stop and go. It's not 10 seconds. He has to come into the pits to serve it.
Yep, absolutely. If it's just a 10-second time penalty, if they add that onto a pit stop, if he still makes one, if he has no more pit stops to make, they'll just add it onto his race time once he crosses the checkered flag. 9/10 of a second though, he's fallen back a bit on that lap compared to Max Verstappen.
He has been given a 10-second stop and go penalty. 10-second stop and go penalty, which he needs to serve within 2 laps.
GP Lambiase, that's Max Verstappen's engineer, is absolutely right. He has to pit to serve this penalty. It's not added on at the end of the race.
No, it's not, that's what I'm saying. And he has to serve it within 2 laps as well. So he will be coming in within the next 2 laps. He's 7/10 behind Max Verstappen. This is the reprieve that Red Bull wanted.
No, we have been given a 10-second stop-go penalty, which we will take this lap.
I think that's really harsh. I think it's extremely harsh. I'd love to see other people's data and see which other drivers committed the same foul.
In he comes. Let's head down to Rosanna Tennant.
Oh, Lando Norris is going to be fuming. In he comes into his pit box. McLaren mechanics are waiting for him. They're going to have to wait for a little bit before they can do anything to the car, if they're actually going to change tyres. I don't think they're going to change anything. I wouldn't change anything. If you change onto the soft tyre, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, I think, at this late stage. Even if you wanted to go for fastest lap, the engineers were telling me it wouldn't even be worth it. But off he goes again. There we go. I can now see him peeking around the corner, and he's back out into the fast lane of the pit lane.
That will be an absolute punch to the gut for McLaren and Lando Norris, who were so hoping they might be able to take the Constructors' Championship this weekend. Here is Norris.
For what? Failing slow under the yellow flag.
And that is the reason Will Joseph tells Lando Norris he has the penalty. Lap 46 of 57, 10 laps to go. Verstappen ahead of Leclerc, 3.6 seconds. The Ferrari has worked his way up to second. The McLaren is behind of Oscar Piastri. Then it's Russell. Gasly right now is having a brilliant race in fifth, keeping Carlos Sainz of the Ferrari behind. Then it's Alonso, who, having had a pretty struggling start to this Grand Prix in the melee, has worked his way up to seventh. Zhou Guanyu for Sauber is currently eighth, a couple of seconds back from Alonso, a couple of seconds ahead of Albon. Sauber and Zhou have not scored any points in exactly a year. It was at this race last year they scored points. They lie pointless right now. Could Zhou do it as he departs the team at the end of the year? And further back, or further up front, just ahead of Zhou, Carlos Sainz trying to get past the Alpine of Gasly.
Alonso 25.5.
Leave me alone, mate. I'm pushing.
That was Zhou on the radio being told that Alonso is not too far up the road, but Zhou is in the zone. He doesn't want to be told anything on the radio. Concentration to the max. He knows what's at stake for the Sauber team here. They so want some points before the end of the season.
Well, for a race that threatened to be a little bit dull when we got their starting grid, this has really come alive, Harry. What a race. I mean, Zhou Guanyu in 8th, Alex Albon in 9th, K-Mag in 10th. And the front lot of the order's just been shaken around with the Lando Norris penalty.
This is the sound of Kevin Magnussen from a few laps ago. How do you read this one, Sam? Magnussen was trying it around the outside of Albon in the Williams, and Albon showed him the door initially, and then I'm getting another look at it now. And Magnussen claimed that, Albon just shoved him off the track. I thought initially there was contact, but there wasn't really.
I think K-Mag would have done the same thing to Alex Albon if it was the other way around.
Well, forcing another driver off the track has been noted. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton for a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
Okay, at least we've got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So it looks like I forgot to press the button on that first time behind the safety car.
Park the car, mate.
Negative.
And he's had a 5-second time penalty as well. And what does that do for the mindset of Lewis Hamilton, who sounded like he just wanted to pull up and retire? Told negative on that front, and will come out behind Lando Norris, who is now down in 14th. Hamilton comes out plumb last in 15th. That 48.57, Verstappen leads by 4 seconds to Leclerc. Then it's Piastri, Russell, Gasly is 5th ahead of Carlos Sainz. Then it's Fernando Alonso in 7th. Zhou Guanyu is 8th ahead of Albon and Magnussen. That's the top 10, and they are your point scorers. Magnussen trying to hunt down Albon ahead. Bottas is 11th ahead of Tsunoda and Lawson. Norris 14th. Then comes Lewis Hamilton. We've lost in this race. Nico Hülkenberg is in the Haas. Sergio Perez for Red Bull. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. Esteban Ocon's Alpine. And the Williams of Franco Colapinto.
So over to Oscar Piastri, really, for McLaren hopes this evening, just outside of DRS zone on Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc, in turn, is 4 seconds already behind the leader, Max Verstappen. So if, with any luck, Oscar Piastri can get within DRS as a complete impartial, of course, it would be nice to see Oscar Piastri put Charles Leclerc under pressure for P2 this evening.
Yeah, he's about a second back now, isn't he? As Hamilton, having wanted to pull up and retire, is now told to box to retire the car. The 7-time champ bows out of this one. Meanwhile, Magnussen is not bowing out from the fight with Alex Albon. Round the outside of the Williams into turn 1. And K-Mag gets the job done. The Haas driver back up into 9th. 2 crucial points for the Haas team. Albon is pummeled back down to 10th. 1 point for him at the moment. Crucially, though, Joe in the Sauber is only 4 seconds up the road from Kevin Magnussen, but the fight isn't between Haas and Sauber. But Kevin Magnussen will want to score the maximum points possible for his team, which he leaves at the end of the year.
Absolutely doing a cracking job this evening is Zhou Guanyu. Disappointment for Lando Norris as he is pumping in some seriously quick laps. That's 2 fastest laps of the race in a row. For sure, Lando Norris would have been hunting with Max Verstappen for the win this evening if it hadn't been for that penalty.
That'll be as well for Lewis Hamilton in the 3rd DNF this season. Last retired in Australia and Austin, and hangs up his helmet in Qatar. We'll see him again for one final time for the Mercedes team next week in Abu Dhabi. Can he end on a high? And it really has been a roller coaster, in the highs of Vegas to the absolute lows of what this weekend has been in Qatar for the 7-time champ.
He's not hanging up his helmet though. He is going to Ferrari.
Oh, he's going up to Ferrari.
Yeah. There's that.
Hanging up his Mercedes helmet.
Yeah.
And
putting on a red suit.
and putting it on at Ferrari. Right now, though, it could easily be forgotten that somehow Pierre Gasly, for all the melee, all the safety cars, has called it right, some good overtakes as well, has got himself up into 5th spot at the moment. That would bag him 10 points, and that would put Alpine back up into 6th place in the Constructors' Championship. So for all the good work Kevin Magnussen is doing down in 9th, they would still fall back with Haas down to 7th. RB at the moment looking like they're not going to score any points. It's not been their weekend for Tsunoda and Lawson. They would remain in 8th place. So that would be a big change up down to 6th place in the Constructors' Championship. And as I say, Kevin Magnussen, I think he's under investigation.
Nice one, Kev.
That was what Kevin Magnussen had to say about Alex Albon when he went round the outside of him. And the incident involving Albon and Magnussen is under investigation for causing a collision. That came through a couple of minutes ago, so we'll see if that one bears fruit for anything. But Magnussen was pretty happy with that one either way.
Oh, he's pumped up, isn't he? K-Mag loves a feisty race. He always gets his elbows out, and that was no exception. Great move.
Yeah, it certainly is starting to unfold itself, this story of the Qatar Grand Prix, where it was George Russell who lost the lead off the line, having started from pole position. Max Verstappen has been leading then since the majority of this race. Lando Norris was behind him, but Lando Norris received a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for speeding under the yellow flags. That was out, not lifting up enough, and that was a penalty. He's now down in 13th. The race was then thrown on its head. 2 safety cars really reshuffled the order, with Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz both suffering punctures to their front left tyre. And we also had a safety car straight away after incidents between Franco Colapinto and Esteban Ocon and Nico Hülkenberg. They were out after first lap contact. Lance Stroll retired earlier on too after a skirmish with Alex Albon. That is how we lie right now. It's Verstappen who has the lead, 4.2 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. Then comes Oscar Piastri in 3rd. Russell is 4th, ahead of Gasly in 5th. Sainz is 6th, Alonso 7th. Zhou Guanyu is 8th for Sauber ahead of Magnussen, and Albon rounds out the point scorers in 10th. Then it's Valtteri Bottas, Tsunoda, Lawson, Norris, and Lewis Hamilton has just retired. So 14 racers left in this race. Then it's Hülkenberg, Perez, Stroll, Colapinto and Esteban Ocon, who have all retired earlier on in this race.
It's not out of the realms of possibility for Lando Norris to actually make his way back into the points this evening. Lando Norris now in 13th, soon to be 12th, as he will overtake Yuki Tsunoda into turn 1. Off he goes and into 12th place. He's now got to hunt down and battle with Valtteri Bottas and then Alexander Albon if he wants to score a really crucial World Championship point this weekend.
Absolutely. Just on Hamilton, he was told to box to retire, but he actually hasn't come in. He stayed out. So he's not out of this one yet. He is 15th and last, though, as it currently stands. The gap at the moment between McLaren and Ferrari for that constructors title stands at 19 points is the gap. So this will be sealed. It's going to go all the way to the checkered flag. Having watched this race so far, I would hasten to predict anything what's going to happen in the next 5 or so laps. But Max Verstappen does look like he has got this one in hand, at least for the race win. The gap is 5 seconds to the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Then comes Oscar Piastri in 3rd. The nearest fights at the moment look like they are in that midfield gaggle. Valtteri Bottas is right on the back of what could be a point for the second Sauber as well. Could it be double point scores? He's currently chasing Albon for 10th. Meanwhile, Carlos Sainz in his efforts to chase down Pierre Gasly's Alpine, having another snap and another moment through the right-hander, and that's lost him more speed. This is the sound of Valtteri Bottas, who's forced out wide through the outside of turn 1, but I think Bottas has now got ahead of the Williams, and there will be elation in the Sauber garage as the 2 fluoro green Saubers are both in the points. Zhou is 8th, Bottas is 10th.
Not for long though, Harry. I think Lando Norris is going to be on his coattails imminently as he sends it down the inside of Alexander Albon. Lando Norris already up to 11th, now hunting down Valtteri Bottas for that final point.
Well, just to reiterate, we came into this weekend with McLaren on the verge of sealing the Constructors' Championship. If it ends like this, though, the championship will go to Abu Dhabi. 53 of 57 laps remaining. Looking forward to the final race of the season at the Yas Marina circuit. Right now, though, still the final scores to be settled. Could Lando Norris steal perhaps 2 points if he can get himself into the top 10? He's got Valtteri Bottas ahead of him. He has the fastest lap at the moment. If he's able to hold on to him and stay inside the top 10, he will get that extra point as well for having the fastest lap. I'm impressed, Sam, by Pierre Gasly right now, because Carlos Sainz has just not been able to really apply the pressure and get ahead of the Alpine.
Yeah, I'm extremely impressed by Pierre Gasly, but do you know who my driver of the day is so far? Is Zhou Guanyu in 8th place. What a drive. No points this year. That car has been, well, let's face it, it's been the worst car considerably all season. So to bring it home in P8 would be a remarkable achievement for a driver that doesn't have a seat next year in Formula One. Fair play.
Finished 9th here last year, did Zhou Guanyu. And Valtteri Bottas finished in 8th. It was double points for Sauber this time last year. Bottas saying the upgrades finally doing their job at the Sauber, but it's a little bit ironic, a little bit too little too late for the 2 incumbents of the seat. They will make way for Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto for next season. So Norris is fighting with Valtteri Bottas. It's all over the back of him, and I think we've just had another 10-second time penalty come in for Alex Albon in the Williams for causing a collision. Was that in the fight, I believe, with Kevin Magnussen a little earlier on. And so that will compound Albon's day. He is now out of the points anyway, so they weren't on offer for him. Norris is now ahead of Valtteri Bottas, so Norris is up into the points. He's 9 seconds back from Magnussen, and once again trying to find his way through the right-hander of turn 1. Then they arc left through the left-hander of turn 2. Carlos Sainz in the scarlet red Ferrari cannot find a way past the pink and black Alpine, driven by the Frenchman Pierre Gasly, who right now is single-handedly keeping Alpine in 6th place in the constructors. They were plumb last at the start of the year. What a turnaround.
Yeah, doing a mighty job, Pierre Gasly, in that pink Alpine. Really come alive the last 3 Grand Prix. They made a lot of progress over the second phase of this season. Their car was overweight, it was bad handling, no pace in a straight line. It was a real truck, but they've turned it around, and they're staring some big prize money in the face if they can hold on to this P5. And what might have been for Lando Norris, he's done about 6 or 7 fastest laps of the race in a row now in 10th place. Such a shame that his weekend has been ruined.
Yeah, we'll get that extra bonus point as well. So 1 point for 10th and another for fastest lap if he can hold it right till the very end. That is an extra point in McLaren's favour. So crucial for the team, where it looks like this constructors battle will go down to the wire next week in Abu Dhabi. But just a few laps ago, he won't be setting any fastest laps by running through the gravel, which is what he just did. No further investigation between Albon and Magnussen for forcing another driver off the track. The steward's room, and Rui Marquez, the new race director coming in the Las Vegas Grand Prix. They have been busy this evening. It has been a chaotic race, and another one as well. A safety car infringement for George Russell has been noted. Russell, who started this race on pole, is now down in 4th place, having struggled for pace, for balance as well, and perhaps not the right tyre call after the second safety car period. He was not happy to stick another set of the hard tyre on. He's 1.8 seconds back from Piastri in 4th. It's Verstappen, Leclerc, Piastri, then it's Russell. Gasly is 5th. Sainz still keeping him honest. Alonso is 7th, ahead of Joe. Magnussen 9th. Norris is 10th. Then it's Bottas 11th. Hamilton is up to 12th now, having been on the verge of retirement, is still in this one. And it's the 2 RBs who lie 13th and 14th as Albon comes in to serve his penalty and will emerge out from the pit lane in plumb last. No Hülkenberg, no Perez, no Stroll, no Colapinto, and no Ocon. They've all retired.
And no problem for Max Verstappen as he enters the final lap, 6.2 seconds clear of Charles Leclerc, yet again proving why he is a 4-time world champion. He didn't look that great in the sprint race. They made some changes, and he has come alive in qualifying yesterday and in the race today, Harry.
Absolutely, as we are now embarking on the final lap of this Qatar Grand Prix around the Losail International Circuit, under the lights in the desert. 2 rounds in the desert to seal off the 2024 Formula One World Championship. Norris setting another fastest lap, but there is nothing he can do after that 10-second stop and go penalty. He was in the fight for this win. It was neck and neck between himself and Max Verstappen, but the 4-time world champion, well, what a turnaround. Halfway through this weekend, was nowhere in the sprint race, and right now is on course to seal the Qatar Grand Prix win. And what a result it would be for the Dutchman. Couldn't celebrate his 4-time world championship on the top step of the podium in Vegas, but one more corner to go, weaving left and right. First to the checkered flag in Qatar, it's Max Verstappen who wins under the lights in Losail. Charles Leclerc will get 2nd place for the scarlet red Ferrari, just ahead of the papaya of Oscar Piastri in 3rd. Russell will have to settle for 4th as Pierre Gasly holds on to a remarkable 5th place for Alpine. Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari can do nothing but settle for 6th, ahead of Alonso. And what about Zhou Guanyu? 4 points for the Chinese racer who departs Formula One at the end of this season, and he bags Sauber's 1st points of the season in 8th, ahead of Kevin Magnussen in 9th, and Lando Norris taking 10th at the flag, 1 point, and he should get the fastest lap point as well. Bottas 11th, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Lawson, Albon, the 15 drivers to finish the Qatar Grand Prix.
Yeah, hats off to Zhou Guanyu there. What a drive.
Absolutely phenomenal, though, for the race to be having the storylines it did there. Those punctures seem like an era ago, but it is Max Verstappen who takes the win and manages to hold off Charles Leclerc, who wasn't quite in the hunt in the end. But for McLaren versus Ferrari...
Okay, mate. Karma is a wonderful thing. You definitely did not drive unnecessarily slowly today. Great job.
Simply lovely, guys. Yes, 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 yes. What an unbelievable race again. That was really fun.
Max, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You nailed it from the start, and on either the left or the right side, you'd have done it today. So absolutely outstanding. Your 9th victory of the year. That is quite an achievement. Well done, mate.
Simply a lovely evening again.
9th win of the season for Max Verstappen. Simply lovely. And for the constructors' fight, McLaren versus Ferrari, the gap 21 points. That will be settled at the checkered flag next week in Abu Dhabi, the final race of the season. But for Verstappen, he will take the win today, and it will be Charles Leclerc who closes to 7 points behind Norris for second in the Drivers' Championship. And George Russell given a penalty of 5 seconds at the flag, and that will, how far ahead is he? Well, Pierre Gasly, he was 7.6 seconds ahead of Gasly, so it shouldn't affect his finishing position. Russell will hold on to 4th as the fireworks erupts over Qatar, and Max Verstappen, Rosanna Tennant, has pulled up in that P1 position.
He has. It's a magnificent sight, Harry, as Max Verstappen has driven up onto this sort of digital screen. The fireworks in the background are simply stunning. He's just taken out the steering wheel, putting it back in now as he starts to stand up in the cockpit of his car, stands on top of his RB20, and it's a massive cheer from his team, and he runs and jumps into the crowd. They're patting him on the back. He is very happy with this one, and so are the mechanics. Lots of smiles on all of their faces, and everybody trying to get a handshake or a fist bump with him. And Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull Racing, down there as well, I think eager to congratulate Verstappen. His sister's there too, his mum as well, so a full family affair this evening, and they're all just posing for a team photo now. Max Verstappen with the most wonderful white and gold helmet on this weekend to celebrate his 4th world title. He's just given Dr. Helmut Marko a big hug, and now a hug for his mum and sister, and you can just see the 4 stars on the back of his helmet glinting in the lights here. A hug for his manager and for his team principal, Christian Horner. What a moment. An emphatic victory for Max Verstappen, and the fireworks are just starting to sizzle out. Wow, that's a lot of pound coins up in the air.
It certainly is, Rosanna. Thank you very much, as Charles Leclerc gets out of his Ferrari. Not looking quite as elated, but I think, Sam, Ferrari and Leclerc, they'll take second today.
Ferrari have had a great day. Charles Leclerc has closed in on Lando Norris for second in the drivers, and Ferrari have closed in and now have more of a realistic shot at trying to gain the Constructors' Championship in Abu Dhabi. It'll be difficult because the McLarens should be fast in Abu Dhabi, but on a day where McLaren looked like they could seal it at one stage in the race today, they've come away from it, and Ferrari have closed the gap.
Yeah, there'll be 44 points up for grabs in Abu Dhabi, and the gap 21 points between McLaren and Ferrari. So it is still game on right till the bitter end in this 2024 Formula One World Championship. Oscar Piastri finished 3rd for McLaren. That's his 8th podium finish of the season, and he is now just removing his helmet, putting his cap on, and putting on the watches that they all get for finishing on the podium. Before we'll hear from them in a few moments' time as to what they made of that race. Russell managing to hold on to 4th despite that 5-second penalty at the end. Pierre Gasly's P5 moves Alpine back to 6th in the Constructors' Championship. Sainz P6. He'll be disappointed to have fallen behind Gasly, but that's actually his best finish at the Qatar Grand Prix. Alonso 7th. That ends a 4-race scoreless streak for Aston Martin. Finally back into the points, when at the start of this race, Alonso at one point was tumbling backwards. Zhou Guanyu equals his career best result in 8th, and Sauber will avoid a pointless season at the end of the checkered flag come in Abu Dhabi. Bottas couldn't quite squeeze into the points in the end, but darkness surrounds this circuit, illuminating the Losail International track. Let's hear from our top 3 with David Coulthard.
So Oscar Piastri, third place finisher in what was a very eventful race. Safety cars galore, penalties, and you had quite a few moments as you were in your own battle. We saw you working the wheel hard to keep the car on track.
Yeah, it was a tricky race. I think the cars at the front seemed to have very similar pace to each other, and it was really, really tough to make the inroads to get into DRS, and then far enough into DRS to overtake. So a couple of good moments with Charles out there, and nice to end up on the podium, but not quite the result we're looking for.
Yeah, this does mean that this championship battle well and truly goes down to the final Grand Prix.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Lando's penalty was for, but obviously quite a big one. Going to be an exciting end to the year. I think hopefully we can be strong, but it's going to take everything we've got to seal the deal.
A year ago, we saw you all exhausted at the end of this race. The safety cars have broken this one up, so physically a lot more controlled this year.
Definitely. I think just the temperature as well. The track's a lot faster this year, so it should be tougher, but I think the fact that it's not a sauna in the car this year is making life a bit easier. So fun race, mega track. It's probably the most fun of the whole year around here. So enjoyed the race, just not quite the result.
Great to hear you love the track. We'll leave you to go and enjoy the podium.
Third place man Oscar Piastri talking to David Coulthard. Let's hear from
Charles Leclerc, second place in the end. So given the events of that Grand Prix, I guess you'll not be too disappointed with that result.
I'm really happy. I mean, honestly, I will have signed straight away if I had a paper that told me that we will finish second after a weekend like this, especially on a track like this, because our car characteristics is not fitting very well with this track, and we knew it was going to be a very difficult weekend compared to the McLaren, but at the end we managed to take some points away from them. So the fight will be all the way to the last race in Abu Dhabi next week.
We had that controversial moment with a couple of punctures. Your teammate picked up that puncture. Were you well aware of the debris on track? Were you in contact with your engineer?
Honestly, I don't know whether it was the debris or the way the curbs are and the way we need to ride the curbs. On the curbs, I just ignored it because I knew that there was too much performance in it, and I was just hoping to not have a puncture myself as well. For the debris, I was staying on the left in the straights, hoping that it wouldn't bite me, and it didn't. Hopefully, it's a shame for Carlos because obviously as a team it would have been great to be further up with Carlos. But it's the way it goes, and it's still a positive weekend overall for the team.
So given that you weren't expecting this circuit to be strong for you, as we go down to the wire for the constructors a week's time in Abu Dhabi, where do you see yourself in performance terms there?
It's difficult to know. I think we are all very close, so I think it's going to be very tight, but it's exciting. 21 points is still a lot, but everything is possible and we'll give it all.
Okay, well, congratulations. Enjoy the podium.
Been off the podium for a couple of races as Charles Leclerc. Pleased to be back on it, but the biggest smile will go to our winner.
And a race winner, Max Verstappen. It's been a while in completely dry conditions, but what a difference a day makes on the ropes and the sprint to leading this from the start, and what was not a dominant victory in terms of your battle with Lando. In the end, it was comfortable.
Yeah, it was a very good race. Of course, already yesterday in qualifying the car was a lot better, and today that first stint was very, very fast. Lando and I were just within 1.8 seconds of each other the whole time, pushing each other. And honestly, it was a lot of fun out there. This track has a lot of grip, and this year the tires are really holding on. So that was honestly a lot of fun to be, really pushing the tire. And we went really long in that first stint. After that, of course, there were a few safety car moments that you had to take care. But very happy, it's been a while in the dry to be this competitive, and very proud of everyone within the team, to turn it around within a day. So they definitely also deserve this victory.
You mentioned the safety cars. It looked the first one you absolutely aced the restart. The second one, you put yourself under a lot of pressure, and it was some brilliant wheel-to-wheel action into turn one, and then you got the final one spot on. So was it like it looked? You just didn't quite get the traction in the second?
On the hard tires, there's very, very little grip. You just come out of the box, so they're already cold, and then immediately, of course, we had the safety car, and behind the safety car, you can't warm them up. And then I tried something different out of the last corner, where I had no rear grip, basically, so I just struggled for traction out of the corner, and then it got a bit spicy into turn one, but I think that's great to see. And then, after that, we drove it to the end with good pace. Very happy to win here.
We've got these three amazing races. You had your World Championship in Vegas. Here we are a week later, you're winning. And in 1 week's time, we're going to be in Abu Dhabi. Have you any idea where your performance will be? Because it seems so close between all of the main teams.
Yeah, it's difficult to say. Of course, the last 3 years, we've always been quite competitive there. So I hope we can be competitive again. But we'll pay attention to detail, to try and optimize the car. And hopefully, we can fight for a win there again.
Well, look, you go and enjoy the podium. Congratulations on this fantastic victory. And ladies and gentlemen, in 1 week's time, we'll have the showdown for the Constructors' Championship in Abu Dhabi.
We will indeed. David Coulthard asking the questions to Max Verstappen, who hasn't won in a dry race since Spain 12 races ago. But of course he clinched the fourth of his World Championships last time out in Las Vegas. He is the winner of the Qatar Grand Prix. Rosanna, that was chaotic for us up in the commentary box. How was it for you?
Pretty eventful, wasn't it? I said Charles Leclerc saying that if he'd been presented with a piece of paper to sign up for that race, he would have signed easily. I'd have signed up for that race at the beginning as well. People were walking around the paddock before the race got started saying, it's going to be a really boring one, nothing's going to happen. Some people saying they even scheduled a nap during the race, but then it came alive, didn't it? It really got us by surprise 3/4 of the way through, or maybe even half of the way through. But I have to say, Parc Fermé absolutely chock-a-block down here. So many people wanting to run down the pit lane to get a glimpse of Max Verstappen. Don't forget, this could be the first and only time they ever see the four-time world champion, so everybody is here shoulder to shoulder. People are on their feet in the grandstands, people are leaning over the balconies up in Paddock Club, the very smart hospitality in Formula One. Everybody trying to soak up the moment, soak up the atmosphere, take a photo, take a video, so that they can say they were here to see Max Verstappen do it once more. Another win for the Dutch driver.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Rosanna, Ted and Sam. Also, crucially, the title fight for the constructors will go to the final round in Abu Dhabi between McLaren and Ferrari. That will be exciting all the way to the checkered flag.
Absolutely thrilling. It's great to have a championship go down to the wire, and this one isn't disappointing. Can McLaren hold on to it? Well, we're going to find out, Harry, in a week's time.
Well, thank you very much for calling that one alongside me, Sam Bird, McLaren's Formula E driver, to the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, to Rosanna Tennant. That is it for us in Qatar. Max Verstappen has clinched the race win ahead of Charles Leclerc. Oscar Piastri rounding out the podium for McLaren, with George Russell in fourth ahead of Pierre Gasly, fifth for Alpine. Sainz was sixth ahead of Fernando Alonso. Zhou Guanyu with a Herculean effort to get to eighth in that Sauber, get their first points of the season. Magnussen ninth, and Lando Norris with a late penalty, 10-second stop and go, managed to recover to steal 1 point for 10th, and then an extra bonus point for the fastest lap as well. The title fight in the teams goes down to the wire next week in Abu Dhabi. Hope you can join us for it. But for now, this has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live, and we're going to be detailing all of that race in the Checkered Flag podcast, which will drop on your feeds in a few hours' time. Bye-bye.